Chapter 181, The People of the Mist. It had already been almost 2 months since the first ambush that began the battle of this ongoing northern war. The frozen earth of the Northlands was drenched in blood that belonged to not only the human hosts but also the uninvited beastmen and elves. Conquer all of Sluira within 10 days, conquer the Northlands within a month, and slaughter all the way to San Antonio within 3 months. The arrogant words that the beastmen had said after the success of their first ambush were now never to be brought up again. The tribe leaders had never expected the human resistance to be stubborn to this degree. The abnormal success of their first ambush had pulled the wool over their eyes. The dullness of the Sluira kingdom's higher-ups had given them the mistaken impression that the battle would end quickly. To nullify the humans' resistance, the beastmen chose to completely slaughter every resident of any city that fiercely fought back against them. They had used the wolf riders to massacre all the villages and had adopted a scorched earth tactic, but this decision had now proven to be the most foolish tactic of all. The massacre hadn't wiped away the humans' will to resist. On the contrary, the cries of their relatives and the vicious manner in which they were slaughtered had helped heat the Mist People's blood and rage to the boiling point. Can you watch your newlywed wife be tortured to death right in front of you? Your elderly father being hanged to death because the invaders wanted to save on food? Your baby being impaled on a spear by those beasts just because of crying? All of this is happening right now. Are you all still men? If you are, then take up your weapons and fight to the bitter end. What's there to be scared of? It's just death. Will that really be worse than living like this in such suffering? After the awful news about the slaughters in the conquered areas spread, the fires of rage hidden deep within the Mist People's hearts were finally stoked. Even without their lord and king's summons, the Mist tribe would have gladly sacrificed their lives to protect their families and friends. The Mist shall never surrender may only be a saying, but it was an indisputable fact that the people of the Mist had never been conquered by foreigners in the past thousands of years. Even in front of butcher knives dripping with blood, the Mist people were just like their ancestors who had never bowed to invaders, with their 1,000-year-old bloodlines awakening instead. The young husband Ama kissed his newlywed wife goodbye as he joined a citizens' brigade without actual combat ability or guarantee. Armed with only a dull wood-cutting knife, his only reason for fighting was so that his future children wouldn't have to grow up filled with the worry and fear that they would become the enemy's glorious sacrifices, impaled on their spears. The elderly soldiers held their spears as they marched towards the front lines. Perhaps it was true that their bodies had already weakened and that they had retired for many years, but their wisdom and experience helped the newer soldiers to avoid the most dangerous traps, helping them quickly increase their skills amid the constant battling. They weren't as ridiculous as that legendary old king who took his own coffin to battle, but they had already resolved themselves that there was a chance for death on the battlefield. I'll be satisfied if my experience can help a few young fellows stay alive and return. If I'm slowing everyone down, please don't hesitate to abandon me. I'll let those beast bastards know what the will of an old soldier really is. If the Red Mabel defense line and Anchuan could be considered the two lighthouses of hope, then the countless number of resistance organizations and citizen militias were the wildfires burning brightly on the plains. And when all these fires were lit, it would be next to impossible to extinguish them. Who's afraid? It's just death. It's f-king worse to live under such suffering. Perhaps this sentence was rather vulgar, but it was a testament to the hardiness of the northern people who were used to living in a meat grinder. Damn it, there's resistance organizations and guerrilla troops everywhere. Those guys are insane. In the cities that the beastmen had taken over, any beastmen soldiers that went out by themselves would never return. Even the strong wolf rider teams were gradually beginning to vanish. Those citizens who didn't have any armor or sharp weapons learned how to ambush their enemies using the terrain and lure the vicious beasts with bait through the continuous battles. Not only did the vicious slaughtering not scare the people of the Mist, but it did the opposite instead, adding fuel to the flames of the desire for revenge. They're literally insane. Have you ever seen a head that would still keep staring at you after you cut it off? Have you ever seen a legless beggar suddenly cling onto your leg and tell his comrades to pierce through you together with him? They're basically a bunch of crazy bastards. The beastmen that were so fond of battle had now become afraid. After witnessing the humans' maniacal and suicidal attacks just so that they could perish together with the beastmen, The beastmen that had viewed dying in battle as the greatest honor had now become afraid. The humans' blood-red eyes and stares even after death caused the beastmen to become frightened. The beastmen finally realized why those weakling humans had successfully blocked their invasions for thousands of years and even forced their strong ancestors back to the northernmost plains countless of times. We can't keep going on like this. We have to destroy any hope they have for resisting and hit their most critical spots with one attack. The beastmen abandoned their original combat strategy of steadily conquering all the areas, and quickly gave up on the outer cities. Instead, they focused all their energy on destroying the two lighthouses of hope. And so, the Slower Kingdom's capital, Anchuan, met with an emergency situation, and the humans' allied forces' main headquarters, the Red Mabel defense line, brought up the rear. The beastmen tribe leaders knew that unless they were able to take out these two annoyances, this battle might never end. Anchuan has surrendered, King Fismer has surrendered. After this astonishing news began to spread, there was disbelief at first, which was soon followed by painful howls of crying throughout the entire country. An old soldier in the last years of his life had lost his son, grandson, and son-in-law in this battle but didn't shed a single tear. He would always feel his mustache and smile in pride when talking about his family members that died in battle. They're all very fine people, they didn't shame old Philly's name. Since they're now dead, this old fellow shall continue fighting in their place, and when I'm dead, my granddaughter and daughter will continue fighting. I refuse to believe that we can't get rid of those goddamned beasts. But when he heard this piece of news, he ended up crying like a little child, collapsing on the floor as he pointed with a trembling finger towards the north and began spewing insults. My sons, what did you all die for? Such a bastard country is not worth us sacrificing our lives for. Your deaths were worthless. This was also why Roland had been in such a rage. Even when the country's citizens hadn't given up, why was the king, who was supposed to be their protector, giving up? At the very least, the Roland from that year long ago would have performed his duty of royal protection, even from the grave, like a skeleton or a ghost carrying a grudge from hell. Along with their unyielding battle spirit, the story of the twin brothers helped the people of the Mist remember that their people would never give up. They only recognized kings who also never surrendered. False King Fismer. He doesn't deserve to be king. Although there were angry denunciations and doubts among the people when the news of the surrender had started to spread, the beastmen had indeed achieved their goal of landing a vicious blow to the Mist people's morale. Right after that, there were much fewer resistance movements than before. Fismer's surrender represented the first time in history that the Mist royalty had ever submitted, and it was as if the people's backbone had received a massive blow. Snap! The backbone that represented the unyielding nature of the citizens was cracking pitifully, and it was almost to the point where it seemed to be broken. The people's spirit of bravery and resistance was almost at the breaking point as well, but luckily the previous King Roland appeared and executed Fismer right there on the spot, as he declared the surrender to be invalid. He then passed the kingship on to the only daughter of the previous generation's king, Princess Galena Koso. The Mist royalty hasn't surrendered after all, nor has our flag fallen. Anchuan's battle still continues, and our king is still battling. Fortunately, Roland's appearance reignited the sparks of resistance into flames that were even stronger than before. His oath also brought a new era upon the people of the Mist. Our Mist tribe never enjoys war, so we swear that we shall never start a war of our own volition. Old Philly also shouted that very oath as he jumped off a cliff together with an enemy. He had already learned of his daughters' and granddaughters' deaths, but this time, he did not shed a tear, and instead nodded while smacking his chest proudly. They did in two beasts before they died? Excellent job, as expected of old Philly's family. Go ahead first, I'm coming soon. We promise to meet each other again in heaven. But if war comes to us, we're going to teach the invaders how sharp our swords are. Ama was now at only the combat level of an ordinary soldier, and he had written that sentence in a letter to his wife. After Ama's death, a fellow soldier would pack up his belongings and mail out this final letter to his wife. Ama had already carried out his promise. We don't like war, nor do we enjoy war, and we now declare our national church to be that of the law God. We swear that we shall never start any war of our own volition, but if war is truly unavoidable, then we shall spend every last breath to protect our home. We swear that our tribe shall forever exist in the Northlands. Such a short oath carved a brand new path for the entire people of the Mist. Not only in the Slower Kingdom, but even those in the nearby East Mist communal country who were also descendants of the Mist tribe were repeating this oath over and over again. We shall spend every last breath to protect our home. We swear that our tribe shall forever exist in the Northlands. 174 knights were riding on young frigid nightmares. Under the guidance of the senior Lion King, those young nightmares, which had hatched prematurely, had already signed new contracts with the young knights, and the new generation of Aurora Knights had completed their final training under the flowing battle flag of the Mist. Today was the day for these young knights to head to the battlefield to assist their fellow Mist people. Under the watchful eyes of their family members and with the guidance of the undead veterans of the Aurora Knights Order, each silver-colored battle horse had begun their long flights. Although there were still traces of naivety in the expressions of the young knights, their arms were as solid as rocks as they wielded their spears and looked towards the distant sky. In the distance, they could see their fellow Mist people bleeding fresh blood, and they all wanted to rush there as quickly as possible to end this war. Let them witness the strongest aerial cavalry unit on the continent. Allow them to see the pride of the Mist people. When they finally entered the northern battlefield, they were destined to become the new center of attention. Without a doubt, the Aurora Knights, who were the pride of the Mist, would stoke the fires even further. And when all these oaths connected together and the oath to never start a war of their own volition awakened the sacred sword that carried the will of the gods, the Mist people's oath finally received a response. I, the law god Woomians, declare that I shall protect the people of the Mist. When holy, silver light descended from the clouds, the Mist people finally received the protection of their own true god. And with the increasing number of believers, Woomians also underwent an evolution, and he received a new divine job title, the Guardian God of the Northlands. As long as the masters of this land obey the principle of never starting any wars, I shall protect them. I bless them that they shall never be conquered, and I bless them that they shall. With the descent of a guiding path of light, the souls of the people of the Mist tribe now belonged to Woomians' domain. The brave warriors who had sacrificed themselves for the Mist would become heroic spirits, and not a single true god would be able to steal the Mist tribe's souls away from Woomians, not a single one. Why was I so certain? That was because, Roland, that big rock's too difficult to deal with. Just do the best you can, I have something more important over here. Ah, where was I? Right. I bless them that they shall walk towards the peak together with victory. I bless them that they shall enter the hall of Valhalla after death. May a fair sky forever stand above the Northlands. My voice synchronized with the voice in the sky as we finally took this step after so many sacrifices. I, the law god and guardian god of the Northlands, Woomians, swear to remove all invaders. You don't accept it? Then, let's battle. Chapter 182, Willpower. The protection of a true god? Mortal battles didn't need it thanks to the fundamental laws of the world. It was impossible for true gods to directly intervene in mundane matters. That forest guardian true god of the elves? The fact that he was now dead was plenty of evidence of what would happen if one broke the rules. But it was enough for the brave warriors who fought to protect their tribe. The mortal Mist King Roland announced their glory while Woomians from the heavens above announced that their heroic deeds would be recognized by everyone. Even if they died and their souls slept forever, it would be fine. It was fine as long as their glory existed in the hearts of the true warriors of the North. For the beastmen, however, it was devastating. Perhaps a true god's protection seemed rather ephemeral, but it was actually supremely dangerous when they witnessed it for themselves. What will Woomians do? Will he make the Church of Law participate in battle? Or will he personally give out divine punishment? This was especially so because the Beastmen's original true god had already perished in the previous holy war. Due to this unbalance in power, they were now even more afraid of the intervention of a true god. We can't afford to hide our full power any longer. Lond, send out your best forces. Kagra, let's combine your blue-feathered harpy division with my blood ox tribe as our warriors lack the protection of air cavalry and casters. Hamar, Sostillo, stop your brave warriors from wallowing in regret. Even when they're off their steeds, they're still our most elite warriors, and our castle-scaling warriors lack the command and leadership of the elite. All the tribal leaders who were mentioned nodded in silence. As the highest ranks of the allied forces that constituted the Beastmen armies, They each had strong tribes but had been avoiding sending out the best of their troops to prevent their own tribes from becoming frontline cannon fodder. However, when it truly came down to it, they would send in everything they had. "We must conquer Red Maple Castle within 2 days. Sound the battle drums, I'm going to fight personally." The Blood Ox tribe leader viciously pounded the conference table with his fist. The crushed sandbox that represented Red Maple Castle seemed as if it was indicating its eventual fate. At this moment, this beastman king, who previously seemed to be more like a merchant than royalty, was finally showing off his own pride as a beastman. The snow was falling intermittently, but the temperature never once rose above 0 degrees. The damned weather would freeze any skin directly exposed to the elements. The sun had already set, but the number of beastmen surrounding the walls of Red Maple Castle didn't decrease in the least. It was the opposite. With the return of the Wolf King's troops, the beastmen army had increased once again and now included countless of hordes of the famously dexterous wolf riders. Several hundred large torches acted as temporary lighting and heating. After the beastmen discovered that there wasn't enough wood to burn, they tossed all the valuable books and artwork that they had pillaged into the fires as if they were worthless lumber. The humans could even hear the beastmen's unique roughshod singing and the beat of battle drums in the distant beastmen camps. "Damn beastmen, they're looking down on us." To be honest, it was actually the opposite of what the furious humans were thinking. The beastmen were now treating the humans before them as warriors on an equal level to themselves. They were venerating their ancestors on the glorious battlefield to console the souls that had died in battle, and they were also conducting this ritual for the sake of prematurely honoring those of their tribe members that would die in battle. For the beastmen who believed in the war god Holadas, dying on the glorious battlefield was easy to accept. If they could meet their deaths in an epic level campaign, it would be considered as the blessing of the war god. This was why they kept chanting the war god's name as they bravely fought to their deaths, only hoping for a major battle that would please their ancestors' spirits. Of course, since Holadas had already died in the previous holy war and the current war god Calampus was a human god, there was nothing that would answer the beastmen's prayers. Their prayers were more like gratitude and idolization towards their ancestors as they thanked fate for giving them a glorious battlefield where they could challenge their own fates. "If we win, we can finally return to the great Bayanluya Plains, the place of origin of all beastmen. It's supposed to be inconceivably beautiful. After this battle, I can finally return to my ancestral home and get married." In their eyes, the battle was already nearing its end. As long as they got rid of those pesky humans, they would only be one step away from completing the grand mission of their ancestors. Those beastmen that belonged to the first wave, which was acting as the vanguard, made preparations for the possibility of their deaths as they charged onto the battlefield. Since their ritual was now over, they believed that their souls would forever accompany their own tribe. They weren't afraid of any sacrifices on the battlefield. We admit that these northern humans are brave warriors as well. Only cowards are afraid of death. This is a grand battle where only one side will live in the end. We fight to the death. Battle drums and bleak horns sounded from everywhere around Red Maple Castle's walls. War songs were continuously sung as the beastmen kept up their current attack for more than 10 hours. Due to the castle walls acting as an obstacle, the siege battle became a bloody and cruel meat grinder. The warriors of both sides were only going to the front line in limited numbers and could only become a part of the endless amount of sacrificial cannon fodder for the attacks of the mages and mage towers. As midnight arrived, the number of combined beastmen troops totaled more than 120,000. The beastmen had Red Maple Castle surrounded so tightly that even a fly could not escape. But even though the beastmen had the advantage in numbers, as well as a higher individual combat strength for each unit, the humans made use of the castle walls for protection, and nobody could change the fact that this was a desolate meat grinder. The castle protectors weren't having an easy time either. With the protection of the beastmen's air cavalry combined with the charge of various colossal creatures, the beastmen were succeeding in scaling the castle walls every minute. Even though they would be tossed down quickly, the sacrifices of the human armies were always several times that of the beastmen. The outermost castle wall's defenders were already in utter chaos when faced with the unstoppable flood of beastmen who were superior in both numbers and quality. Platoons were being devastated in the blink of an eye. The vast attacking forces of the beastmen had an inconceivably high morale. The innumerable beastmen forces swarmed the castle walls like ants, and with the major tribal leaders' elite forces that had been saved for last exploding with astonishing power, this battle quickly turned into a living nightmare for the humans. Finally, the first layer's low-quality castle wall, created by the earth mages using transformed stone to mud and sculpting magic, was finally on the verge of collapse, despite the fact that the beastmen army had also lost many troops to the defending army and their defensive mechanisms. Die, you butchers! Ren sliced through a beastman general's defenses with her silver longsword, piercing through his body and stealing away his life. She unhesitatingly kicked him down the castle wall as the beastman general's pitiful wails echoed out as he met his end. Your Highness Ren. Knights, clear this area and toss down all the beastmen corpses. Watch out for archers. The next attack wave will be here soon. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Her youthful voice now contained an unmistakable regal bearing. The magical ability of battles and helping people mature was always astonishing, and after experiencing the bitter struggles of battle as well as the endless amounts of blood and sacrifice, the cruel burden and responsibilities helped the new soldier Ren to quickly mature. The current Ren was already an experienced battlefield leader who could take charge by herself. Your Highness Ren, all the beastmen's mammoths are on the attack now. The command center's order is to abandon the first castle wall and retreat to the inner layer. Retreat? You're telling me to retreat? Just look at this battle and all those brave warriors who have sacrificed themselves already. We haven't even been able to retrieve their corpses yet, and you dare to tell me to retreat? The messenger was also very familiar with Ren. Even though Ren was angrily shouting at him, he was the sub-commander of Anchuan. He knew that now wasn't the time to cower to her. You think I want to retreat? I King want to fight those beastmen bastards to the end as well. Our main forces have suffered and lost so much. The earth mages have depleted their mana and can't keep up with the speed of repairing the walls compared the beastmen in destroying them. If this keeps up and the beastmen break through our defenses, it'll be nothing but a meaningless slaughter. There's no other way but to retreat and guard the inner castle. Fine. You guys retreat. I shall show you once more the pride of the people of the mist. Dimlet, is the Train King ready yet? If it takes any longer and isn't ready for combat, I'm going to cut off your head. It's currently undergoing a full self-checkup, and it'll be ready in 5 minutes. But it can't be used for any longer than 10 minutes, or it'll self-destruct. Okay, Borealis, toss down the Titan warriors from a long distance. Help our allies stand firm. When the beastmen's mammoths began their next attack, the castle walls were nearly knocked over by their heavy impacts as dense amounts of beastmen scaled the castle walls. Just as all the walls were entering their largest emergency situation yet, the Princess Knight finally gave the order for the Eastern Mist communal country to reveal its ace secret weapon. The gigantic battleship began operating once more as its cargo hold opened up. What flew out along with its rockets were prototype Roland Titans. As experimental subjects, these Roland Titans had already completed their tasks for history and would end the final moments of their lives explosively on the battlefield. Boom! 5 Titans landed directly on top of the beastmen that were in the process of scaling the castle walls. The beastmen stared in amazement at the gigantic beings before them. Even the tallest and strongest elephantmen reached only the shins of these Titans, and they were completely unable to be of any threat to the Steel Titans at all since they were unable to carry any heavy weaponry. The crazed Steel Titans stomped with their feet and slapped with their hands. These accidental products of the underground world finally revealed their true natures as heartless war machines. You beasts! This is for my son who isn't even 10 years old. A furious mecha smashed the beastmen in front of him to pieces. Inside the cockpit was a furious volunteer pilot who was doing his best with the complicated controls of the mecha. Inside a pendant around his neck was his family's portrait, but he was the only one alive now. Even he himself had lost his left foot, so this was the only method by which he could take revenge for his hometown. A red warning light within the cockpit began flashing. From the very beginning, this Titan mecha was at the end of its time, and overloading it had given it astonishing battle power, but it also turned it into a super explosive that was in danger of exploding at any moment. Kamet, hurry up and get out. It's about to explode. Activate your rocket chair already. He ignored the Borealis command center. He had just discovered a large centaur wielding a massive war pike while killing human soldiers. This centaur was a monster who was more than 3 meters tall, and each swing of his war pike would kill many human soldiers. Hamar the Butcher. I finally found you. These easily spotted characteristics just happened to belong to the butcher who had slaughtered his entire hometown. The furious mecha pilot smashed every beastman in his way to pieces. Even when the beastmen climbed all over the mecha in swarms and the battle axes smashed onto the cockpit's door, he didn't slow down even a little bit. However, foolish hunk of metal. The weak humans can only rely on such useless things. Every beastman tribe leader was at least of legend rank strength or higher. Hamar was famed even among the tribe leaders for his combat strength, so there was no way he would be easily dealt with. When he jumped, Hamar's height was even taller than the Titan. Slice. With one swing of his war pike, the gigantic golden arc brought death along with the explosion of the cockpit and half the mecha. Hamar didn't even intend on watching the explosion behind him and was only focusing on continuing his slaughter. But he didn't expect the already fallen mecha to reach out with its only remaining hand and clutch onto him. The prideful Centaur tribe leader began roaring in anger. His frightfully powerful strength caused even the steel arm to start shaking. Only weaklings need to rely on these foolish objects, while we beastmen can stand on top of the world with only our bodies. We are the high-class species that deserves to be at the center of the world. In the demolished cockpit, the blood-covered Kemet was still biting onto the control lever with his only remaining tooth. He was also smiling while the gigantic Centaur made fun of him condescendingly because he could see the red warning light that indicated that the Roland Titan's engine was right at the limit of exploding. Really? Hey, then see the weak human race's willpower for yourself. See you soon in heaven, Elsa, Nini. Your papa's taking revenge for you. Kemet opened his mouth, which was filled with blood and broken teeth, and viciously pressed his chin against a red button. Finally, a red explosion covered everything as a mushroom cloud rose up by the castle wall. Impossible. That was the last word that the haughty Centaur warrior had said. The weak human had used his own life to prove his bravery. At the very least, they both died together. The tribe leader Hamar has died in battle. The Centaur tribe is beginning to flee. The tribe leader Bartholo has died in battle. The beastmen's attack on the northern castle door failed, and their siege weapons were destroyed. Their reinforcements were no longer able to press the attack. The tribe leader Relosian has died in battle. Both the northern and southern attacks on the castle have failed. The strategist Twin has died in battle at the southern castle door. For the tribe leaders, who were still in the midst of patching up their own injuries, every single news of a tribe leader's death was like a lightning strike on a clear day. But what could they say? Could they blame their fellow tribe leaders and point fingers by saying they were nothing but words? Honestly, it was difficult enough for the remaining tribe leaders to survive the field of battle against the maniacally resisting humans. If one of those terrifying red mushroom clouds exploded near them. Hey, wasn't the mighty Hamar a perfect example? Hamar, what a pity. Treat his family well. After a long silence, Emin could only give his condolences as he shook his head and continued cleaning his weapons. Now wasn't the time for needless sympathy. Who knew if he would be the next one? Kemet, what a pity. Treat his family well. Oh, he has no more family left. Then let's put his hometown's reconstruction at the top of a list for cities to be reconstructed. At the same time as Emin, Rand could only sigh and give her own condolences when she learned that only 2 out of the 5 Titan pilots had returned alive. Kemet didn't even attempt to activate his rocket chair for an escape. Dimlet, are you still not F-King ready yet? I'm going to shoot you out of a gnome cannon if you aren't ready. It's ready. You definitely can't let the Train King overheat. Otherwise, we're the ones that will explode. Its energy source has 30 times the power of the Roland Titans. The entire castle wall will collapse from the explosion. The floating battleship finally landed and opened up its cargo door to allow an even more terrifying war machine to walk out. Just its appearance caused every beastman warrior to tremble in fear. What kind of monster is this? Those East Mist humans are insane. Chapter 183, Princess Knight. The maxims of battle dictated that practical functions were the most important on the battlefield. Something like a beautiful outer appearance wasn't even worth considering. While a humanoid mecha may seem awesome, its attack methods were actually rather simple. Since it imitated the attack patterns of a human, it was easy to predict and defend against, and since it needed to maintain its balance while walking, A great amount of development resources and parts would be spent on balancing the mecha. This was doubtlessly a critical amount of waste, especially when the technology was still immature. But then what type of combat mecha was the most efficient? It needs plenty of space for firearms, so the best way is to have many individual sections that can contain more weapons and parts. Let's abandon the walking mechanism that's just a waste of resources. As long as it can kill, it's fine even if it crawls on the ground. I feel that it needs as many individual parts as possible so that it can even let go of broken parts, reorganize itself, and still be able to do battle. This way, our logistical ability will go up an entire other level. If the enemy consists of mages, then the larger the combat mechanism, the bigger the target. This absolutely can't be too big. Yep, the most important part is to not be too tall. After gathering each other's opinions, the maniacal engineers abandoned all common sense and created this fearsome combat beast, Train King, Prototype 0. The name undoubtedly came from Roland. The shape of the connections between its parts reminded Roland of a train. And now, what currently appeared in front of everyone was such a metallic monster. This metallic monster had many parts connected to each other just like train carriages, and its metallic legs, which imitated that of insects, firmly pierced into the ground. This giant centipede-like metallic monster attracted everyone's attention the moment it appeared. Train? Isn't it just a centipede? Its astonishment was virtually identical to Roland's the first time he saw it. Yep, when this combat mecha was constructed in reality based on its blueprint, its original train-shaped outer appearance became more like that of a metallic insect. It was basically a metallic centipede prancing about on the battlefield. And so, taking into consideration the possibilities on the battlefield, its designers, who had already abandoned all common sense and aesthetics, were also inspired from this. They directly abandoned the inconvenient method of using wheels and instead gave it metallic blades as feet, which would be more suitable for a wider variety of terrain types. Each foot was a blade that could attack by itself, as the Train King's entire body was filled with weapons from head to toe. Its astonishment was soon received by a display of combat effectiveness. The centipede monster climbed past the castle wall at high speed while spraying flammable oil from pipes on both of its sides, and with a spark, all the castle walls it passed by turned into seas of fire. Those seas of fire along its path caused the beastmen to begin shrieking in agony, but only when it reached its destination, stuck its metallic feet into the ground, and transformed into a steel barrier, did it show its true form. All its train carriage resembling parts opened up to reveal the newest gnome cannons in each of them. As a divine artifact that belonged to the cult that believed in as many cannons as possible, the Train King used its actions to show off what the phrase "more cannons equal more power" truly meant. Odd-numbered engineers, fire your cannons. Boom, boom. The entire battlefield outside the western castle door transformed into a sea of fire. Countless beastmen were gifted explosions as each cannon shell landed. But at the same time, the beastmen vanguard that was already on the castle wall was approaching the Train King. They wore vicious grins and let out angry roars as they intended to use their own fresh blood to battle with this hunk of steel. They wanted to let those weak humans know just what true and reliable strength was supposed to be. They had the self-confidence that as long as they were able to get into close combat range, the engineers controlling the cannons wouldn't be an adversary at all. They only needed an instant to break this expensive toy into pieces. But since Dimlad had a reputation for demonic intelligence, how could he possibly leave in such a glaring weakness? Close combat mode, activate. Blades extend. In an instant, all the metallic feet of the centipede rose up again, as its sharp ends transformed into sharp blades for the purpose of slaying the enemy. The sharp blades then began spinning crazily at a high speed. That wasn't all. Even-numbered engineers, ignite your flamethrowers. This time, the train carriages opened up to reveal shocking amounts of high-powered flamethrowers operated by sweaty engineers who had been waiting for this precise moment. Fire. Maintain the flamethrowers for 20 seconds. The flames that could shoot to a distance of several dozen meters created a corridor of despair. Although there were a few incredibly strong individual beastmen who made it past the flames, the rotating blades would unhesitatingly deliver a killing blow. Those damned humans! Now, The beastmen attackers were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either they could be impaled on the blades or be turned into barbecued meat. And killing was only one of the Train King's purposes. Its mega-long mechanical body itself was one of the best barriers and makeshift castle walls, so the incredibly fatigued defending army could finally find some time to breathe and rest. After this movable steel wall started acting as a battlefield barrier and cleaned up everything before it, it took the opportunity to send out large amounts of scalding hot steam through its ventilation pipes. The Train King's energy consumption was far too heavy. Just a few short minutes caused all its parts and engines to overload and overheat, with engineers tossing cold water at the overheating engines as an emergency cooling method. The beastmen noticed this short cooling off period. Just as they were hesitating about whether or not to charge forward again, an even scarier scene was awaiting them. Gun squads, fireball squads, prepare. The most despairing scene was now in front of them. The engineers lifted up their guns, and the magic swordsmen actually jumped on top of the Train King's carriages and started preparing their magic. The brilliantly flashing firebirds started gathering numerous fireballs that perhaps weren't all that high in level, but who would be able to dodge several hundred fireballs being fired at once? Pew! Pew! Boom! Every fireball and deadly gunshot added on to the beastmen's despair as they faced this new generation's firepower and technology. The short, approximately 20-meter distance between them and the humans were keen to the difference between life and death, and the regret of just one more step accompanied them to their deaths. The continuous explosion of each fireball drew all the attention on the battlefield as more and more areas were cleared of beastmen. As the rulers of the battlefield and with the mages gathering together, the deadly force was drastically improved. Finally, the beastmen tribe leaders were unable to stand for this any longer. Under the tribe leader Kagra's lead, a large number of harpies covered the castle walls, resembling the clouds. Along with them was the Dragon Knight who had luckily escaped last time. The Green Dragon Osmanya and his wolf tribe Dragon Knight Rider Kakaji had returned. The Beastmen army had gambled everything on this battle and sent out their few remaining aerial troops. Shoot down that Dragon Knight. If this combat beast had any other weaknesses apart from its unresolvable lack of ability to fight for an extended period of time, they would be that it was far too focused on ground units and that it lacked anti-air capabilities. Ren instantly figured out the weakness of the harpies. They lacked physical strength since most of their throwing spears were made of wood. Even though they could kill humans easily enough with wood spears, they lacked the ability to threaten the steel-bodied Train King. As for aerial spells, did they really have the focus necessary for casting spells while flapping their wings and not falling out of the sky? If they actually had such skills, they might as well be archmages to begin with. That Dragon Knight's the only threat. Kill him. The current Princess Knight was no longer simply the commanding officer at the western castle door. Although she hadn't been promoted yet for her numerous accomplishments, battlefield achievements were far more effective than any rank or title on the battlefield. In truth, she was already the leading commander in charge of the entire Red Maple Castle defense line. But currently, nobody was able to carry out her orders. That Green Dragon Knight was far too cautious and flew so high in the air that no arrows or magic could reach him. According to that Dragon Knight's past tactics, whenever a combat situation got tense, he would attack in an aerial ambush, with his dragon's poison mist being abnormally fatal. Perhaps his single efforts weren't critical in affecting the overall combat situation, but he would definitely give serious blows to the defending army's morale. This time, it was obvious that his target was the Train King. It was also obvious that he intended to use the harpies as a smokescreen to create another opportunity for an ambush in the chaos. All these days of battle had also inflicted heavy casualties upon the humans' Griffin Knights. Those that could still fly were already participating in battle, as after so many days of warfare, both the sides were fighting based on mostly willpower and stamina. Arg! But this time, the Green Dragon Knight's ambush was blocked. Timir. That's right, a gigantic bone dragon suddenly flew up from the castle and shot like a cannonball right at the Green Dragon, causing the Green Dragon to lose its balance in midair. But immediately afterwards, the bone dragon that was riddled with injuries fell right back down again. As the overall aerial commander, Timur had always fought at the front of his soldiers, and both he and his bone dragon were now in bad condition. Just making such an attack had taken all their effort. But while that beastman dragon knight was still catching his balance, death came looking for him, as the princess knight was now behind him. Although she was one of the few who had an aerial steed, Ren wasn't self-confident enough to believe that she could win a direct battle against such a strong dragon knight. But finding the right opportunity during battle for an ambush was one of her strongest skills. There was no such thing as luck on the battlefield. The chaotic situation would always prove who was truly stronger or weaker. The Dragon Knight Kakaji didn't even have time to turn around and see who it was before Ren's longsword came slashing down. The head that went flying was dripping blood in midair, and an expression of disbelief was frozen on its face. The powerful Kakaji died just like that, with his eyes, which were glaring angrily, still filled with shock. Rawr! The young green dragon Osmania started howling painfully as it discovered through the contract that its master had died and received its master's pain. But it didn't suffer for long, as Ren's bloody hands pulled out the spear on her back and gathered a cyan-colored aura. The Dragon Slayer spear from the Dragon Slayer Bastler was then suddenly struck into the green dragon's head. Awoo! The green dragon howled pitifully as it helplessly flapped its wings, but its counter, the Dragon Slayer spear, kept piercing deeper into its brain, and it could only meet its unavoidable demise. With the dragon blood spraying everywhere, Ren completed her own achievement of slaying a dragon. Dragon Slayer Ren. Princess Knight. In everyone's eyes, whenever the Northlands met with danger, just like countless times in history past, a young ruler stood up for their sakes. The joyous cries of the human soldiers helped the young female knight completely shake off the impression of a delicate flower. Now, the Princess Knight's name was known to all as a true knight. Ren jumped back from the green dragon in midair, and her frozen nightmare steed caught her. She herself could barely believe what was happening as she watched the green dragon fall out of the sky. Father, I did it. I'm no longer a useless flower princess. I can protect my own tribe and the Mist Country as well now. For some inexplicable reason, Ren suddenly thought of the man who wasn't on this battlefield at this moment. If he knew about this, would he praise me or lecture me on my recklessness? I think that His Highness Roland would probably lecture you first, then nonchalantly find some reason to reward you. But, I doubt it's the type of reward that you want. Her frigid nightmare's words caused Ren to blush. She suddenly found how inconvenient it was for her mind to be connected to her frigid nightmare. Danger's coming, be careful. There would always be inconveniences attached to being famous. Another dragon knight was attempting to ambush her, and even across all this distance, Ren could feel the bone-piercing hatred. But even Ren didn't expect that her mouth would arc upwards in a smile with the danger right in front of her. She was licking her lips in anticipation and enjoying the stimulation from being on the verge of death in battle. She was enjoying this war, but she was also filled with doubts in her heart at how she felt excited and more clear-headed for no apparent reason as the battle progressed. The beastmen's death cries would honestly make her feel pleasure in her heart, as if she was born for battle and this slaughter was helping her awaken her sleeping talent. She enjoyed this place, she enjoyed hearing her enemies' cries, she enjoyed seeing fresh blood flow. That mysterious excitement made her feel like she was burning. Even if all of that could be explained as the excitement of a newcomer to the battlefield, the fact that her own strength was obviously increasing could not. Forget it, let's stop thinking about it, it's a good thing anyways. That idiot over there, is the burning hot oil still not ready? Toss it down to me and burn those beastmen to death. During the intermittent breaks between battle, the knights excitedly gossiped with each other about what they saw, admiring the fact that their princess was indeed a descendant of the mist as she changed so much in battle. But in the eyes of a few who showed concern, there were obvious changes in Ren that weren't so apparent on the surface. A blood-red light kept flickering in Ren's eyes. The souls of the dead weren't able to enter the cycle of reincarnation, and were instead sucked into Ren's body as they wailed before death. With Ren's continuous feeding, huge black wings that mortal eyes couldn't perceive grew larger and larger on her back. In this darkness, there was one pair of worried eyes that looked at her. This person's expression was filled with an obvious hesitation. Perhaps it may be unnoticeable to other people, but those black wings were more obvious than anything else in Elise's vision. She's also a demonic descendant? Damn it. Roland, it's just as you expected. Rin is a demonic descendant as well. This is the worst possible outcome. Looking at her fierceness and national talent in consuming souls, she has to be at the very least the descendant of a demon overlord. It's quite obvious now, both living descendants of the mist are the descendants of Abyssal Prince Carwins. Carwins, what have you done? In a distant labyrinth, I roared out in anger as I was filled with rage from hearing this news, but my summoned spirit version of Carwins only shook his head in innocence. What? I didn't do anything. I'm just helping you attack people. Facebook, Twitter, Google plus them. Chapter 184, The Seal of the Four Elements. The harsh climate of the Northlands was overtaking the elves' territory. The originally warm temperature that was abnormal for the season clashed with the cold front and caused a natural reaction of thunderstorms, the like of which had never been witnessed in Elven territory. The rain fell in torrents, making it impossible for people to even see themselves. It was only natural that there would be many troubles in such an area, especially in one that was used to dry and comfortable weather. It suddenly experienced such a rainstorm, but this was actually just the beginning. When the chilly grasp of winter staked its claim on this land, the torrential downpour transformed itself into life-threatening hailstorms and blizzards. After its natural climate had been twisted for thousands of years, the entire elf kingdom received the cruelest retribution from nature. Unlike the other Northland countries, the elves had no ability or experience in withstanding the cold weather. They didn't have the necessary thick clothing and firewood supplies for defending against the cold, and solely relying on magical flames would make the mages quickly run out of their already short supply of mana. The hail and snow made this winter 100 times more difficult for the elves in their light clothing. They were now facing the cruelest test of their abilities. If the elf kingdom remained chaotic and didn't change in time, it was entirely possible that less than 10% would survive nature's test. And currently, the leaders of the elves didn't have any time to pay attention to the preparations for the disastrous weather. On the increasingly cruel and frigid battlefield, an incredibly vicious internal battle was raging among the elves. After imprisoning a prince and killing 2 generals, the king of Tassel Kingdom succeeded in grasping the commanding leadership position of the combined armies of 4 countries. Of course, it was impossible for him to deal with every detail of the chaotic situation, and there were still plenty who continued to plot his downfall. It's meaningless to think too much. If we don't win this next battle, there won't even be anything to think about. Resolution was fine, but reality was brutal, and this battle was most definitely not going to be easy. Bad news arrived like snowflakes in succession right at the beginning itself. The Moonblade squad was ambushed by the Dark Elves' Bloodsaw squad and lost over half its members. It can no longer function. Our Pegasus Knights and Hippogriff Knights aren't a match for the enemy's Black Dragons at all. We need support from higher tier aerial cavalry. Those accursed Dark Elves should have been exiled for 10,000 years. All their members are elites. Damn it. We need high-ranked mages. They can just ignore our acolyte mages' spells. Archmage Maladas and all his disciples died to those damn Dark Elf assassins, and the other 3 countries' royal mages all refused to participate in battle. We're being suppressed in magic by the enemy's priests and mages. We encountered a complete one-sided loss in terms of mage strength. Tell those mages to stop using low-level spells. Did they forget about the Dark Elves' magic-resistant skin? Morale, numbers, battle preparation, battle equipment, and high-tier combat strength. The elves couldn't match up to the Dark Elves in any of these aspects, and compared to the Dark Elf armies that were well rested, the Elven allied armies were fatigued from their long travels in the field. The elves were crushed right from the beginning of the battle. Yet greater trouble still lay ahead of them. The 2nd Street. Lawrence's army refuses to carry out your orders. They request to see their prince. The semi-god priest Samana wishes to meet with you. It's probably about the assassination of their general. Your Majesty Adrian, would you like to meet with him or refuse? Adrian hadn't even finished taking care of securing his own position of power. Rumors were already spreading everywhere. If it weren't for the fact that this was an emergency situation, and that the elves were facing their mortal enemy on the battlefield, the other 3 countries' armies would likely have turned against his. Why can't you all understand? Do you think that I enjoy using these dirty methods, or that I wouldn't be heartbroken at Suana's sacrifice? She was my only precious baby daughter. Why did I sacrifice so much? I was doing it for the sake of all elves, Why don't you idiots understand? Why? The furious Tassel Kingdom Elf King Adrian was shouting in his royal tent. He had already broken the various decorations and ornaments around the tent, but even after venting his anger, he could only watch blankly as the situation continued to worsen in front of him. There were endless internal conflicts, a vast enemy army outside, and he was forced to the brink by both internal and external problems. But I wasn't wrong, I definitely wasn't wrong. It's all those idiots' fault. Even now, he still believed that he hadn't made any mistakes. Suddenly, however, one of his closest retainers brought him a short message that caused his expression to change greatly. After a brief pause, he began laughing. If you all won't fight with honor, then I'll do the same. I'm doing everything for the sake of the elves. It's all your fault for not understanding me. Don't blame me even if we meet at the river Styx. By the way, Roland, I recently fell in love with playing chess. That's why I'm giving you a small present that I hope you'll enjoy. Carwins. I was shocked when Elisa suddenly sent me this message. Apart from being shocked at its contents, I was more shocked at the source of the message. It was evident that Carwins understood quite a lot about me through certain channels. Carwins directly contacted your main body. He knows that you're on my side. Are you still safe over there? The side of chaos is rather disorderly. More accurately speaking, apart from a few at the top, the others don't have much interest in this holy war. Of course, they'd be more than happy to have a go at slaughtering the upper dimension, but having them concentrate on plotting and separating allies from enemies is much too difficult for those demons with muscles for brains. Most of the demons are still currently preoccupied with fighting their own kin. Relax, I'm fine. Rather, since I just completed the Will of the Abyss's direct task for me, I even have the possibility of raising my rank. As they were of chaos to begin with, it was only natural for the side of chaos to not have any order or organization among themselves. The norm was for each chaos leader to have their own faction, while demons ranked Baron and above had their own territories. This was just as expected, since this was the only reason for the strange balance between the sides of chaos and order. Despite the fact that the number of Chaos gods outnumbered the Order gods 2 to 1, with the Chaos side's battle power far surpassing that of the Order side. The strong would be the leaders. This was a maxim, but since they were strong already, why should they have to obediently listen and fight a war? To the Chaos side, internal struggles for personal benefits constituted the real prize. Since that side still hadn't come looking for Elisa yet, that meant that she was still safe. At least for the time being. Even a demon prince like Carwins wouldn't be able to declare battle against a female demon earl without making any preparations. Elisa's words helped reassure me, but closer consideration of the message contents made it seem all the more difficult to comprehend. A small present? What could it be? Since the demon prince is personally involved and is bragging with such swaggering delight, it definitely won't be small. It's probably something that will turn the tide of the battle in the enemy's favor. There is some sort of problem. The elves? Red Maple Castle. Antuan? Definder? Somewhere inland in the human territory? There were too many choices and possibilities for me to think about, but someone was unable to tolerate me any longer. Roland, stop dazing off, we can't hold on any longer. Alright. I suppose that's true. Adam finally got tired of my antics and barked at me to remind me of the fact that we were in the midst of a difficult battle. Currently, the gigantic black stone Hulk in front of us had transformed himself into a heavily armored black battle scorpion, and he had buried his massive body directly into the earth. His single, viciously glaring eye was flickering with a dark green light, and those menacing stone spears of his were still searching for victims on the ground. This guy is too ridiculous. Just how many times can he transform? Battling with Immortal Lorcan was an endless nightmare. Each time we became slightly accustomed to his combat style, just as we were about to gain a slight advantage, he would immediately transform again and attack anew. A stone giant wielding a shield and sword, a high-speed flying stone eagle, a stone sword saint who brandished a dozen lightning-fast weapons simultaneously, a stone guardian that was slow and strong. Immortal Lorcan used various different forms in succession against us. He could be said to be at the ultimate pinnacle of physical attacks. You tiny, short-lived creatures, I have experienced countless eras in battles, and have witnessed endless amounts of ferocious battle techniques. My special structure can imitate any combat technique imaginable. and my body will never fatigue. No matter how hard you try, you all shall still be defeated by me." Imrudil Lorcan's heavy roar contained an indescribable emotion that sounded like frustration, as he was unable to defeat us even after such a long time in combat. "Relax, my lovely mortal heroes, I can sense that the dimensional door is in the midst of closing and that his elemental power is beginning to weaken. He won't be able to resist for much longer. My powerful mortal allies, victory is right before us. At the very least, if I die, you all are coming with me." The two raging elemental gods gave me two completely contrasting depictions of their furious battle, but I knew that the truth wasn't how either of them described it. It wasn't true that Imrudil Lorcan was about to be defeated like Camdian claimed, nor was it that Imrudil Lorcan was truly undefeatable like he claimed. The closing of the elemental door meant that Imrudil Lorcan's investment in it had been entirely wasted, and he was indeed currently weakening, but as the strongest and oldest existence among the four elemental gods, he was far from being pushed to his limit. This was definitely going to be a long, drawn-out battle, where any small mistake on our part might result in our deaths. But some things were impossible to conceal. Every time Imrudil Lorcan changed his form or took a blow, he would lose part of the earth element that made up his body. The current him was no longer able to take elemental power from the dimensional door, so he was destined to only become weaker and weaker. We had suffered significantly on our side as well. As the main tank, Adam was battered all over, and the spirit versions of Carwins and Roland had long since disappeared. It wasn't because the time limit was up, it was because they had been defeated. The ironic part was that the spirit Carwins had been attempting to protect the spirit Roland when he was crushed by a gigantic boulder, which had also caused the spirit Roland to automatically be recalled, while at the current moment Roland was currently frustrated about what to do about Carwins. If I'm frustrated, let me make the others get in a bad mood as well. Maybe seeing others in a bad mood will help make me feel better. I suddenly recalled a random sentence I had heard in my past life, causing me to suddenly speak up. Imrudil Lorcan, are you truly proud of the fact that you can use so many forms? The truly strong all have their own distinct style, but what's your style? Just transforming all the time. Perhaps you should be called the Slime God instead of the Earth Elemental God. You coward that only knows how to talk a good fight. I shall definitely rip you apart. Oh my, according to this reaction, I must be on the mark. Do you only know how to say these empty words? That's right, your master monk form was quite powerful. Just which master did you imitate? I wonder if you have the confidence to defeat the real one? Could it be that you perhaps chose to imitate him because you couldn't defeat him? Imrudil Lorcan's single remaining eye was emanating a bone-piercing killing intent, but judging from the fact that he didn't reply, it was apparent that I had touched a sore spot. The attacks of his stone scorpion form increased in ferocity. Hey, stop adding oil to the fire, I'm a tank here. Adam was too good a tank. Even Camdian was using Adam to block attacks. My idling, though, was finally at an end as all my preparations were now in place. Activate, Seal of the Four Elements. The elements all countered each other. This was one of the fundamental maxims of this world. The most powerful seal in this world was a spell array which imitated the bodies of the elementals themselves. As long as this seal activated, and the four elements within it began circulating, it would emulate a sealed world with no exit. Since we were already aware that we were dealing with the elemental gods, we would, of course, be prepared. However, when Margaret had discovered this ancient seal in an archaic, old book, we had met with some small problems. To seal a powerful elemental or magical creature, we need to find 3 elemental power sources that are equal level to it. Imrudil Lorcan's an elemental god, so where are we supposed to find the other 3 elemental gods? Honestly, though, perhaps it was Imrudil Lorcan's unfortunate fate to be doomed. Coincidentally, we had quickly discovered the 3 keys we lacked. The flame seal of the Flame Sea Earl. Elisa, who had obtained the power of the fire elemental god, gave the source of her power to me. While it was the only source of god rank fire elemental power we had, it was definitely a fire elemental power source on the same level as Imrudil Lorcan's Sidon War's ocean bottle. The power of the ancient sea god Sidon War was unimaginable, as even the water elemental god was only his wife and follower god. Even though the divine power residing within it wasn't much anymore, It was actually even more powerful than Immortal Lorcan's. But the final key was rather troublesome. The Wind Elemental's power was quite challenging to obtain, and I had initially intended to make do with Adam's Titan Thunder. Now, however, we had a better option. Camdion, it's all up to you now. Help us complete the seal of the four elements and send Immortal Lorcan to his grave. Chapter 185, The Earth Elemental God's Death. The numerous magical markings on the floor lit up, and the fixed tracks, which had been etched into the stone walls by the sword energy, were for its preparation. With the two elemental magical items prepared in their respective places, the entire stone cavern became flooded with light. After hearing my proposal, Camdion's first reaction wasn't of praise or happiness. His eyes, which were flickering with streaks of lightning, stared at me with such an obvious panic that I instantly understood. Relax, we're allies. How could I possibly seal you? Besides, I would need God rank Earth elemental power in order to seal you. Where would I get that from? Camdion turned to look at his mortal enemy. His meaning was obvious. Wasn't Immortal Lorcan right before us a perfect source? He definitely had God rank Earth elemental power in him. Sealing two elemental gods at the same time? You overestimate me. If we had that level of power, we wouldn't have asked for your help. Do you think that we'd be foolish enough to ask you to seal yourself? How illogical. Okay, I tried everything I could and swore on every oath I could think of. After considered the fact that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him, Camdion managed to nod and agree in the end. And while I was convincing him, poor Adam was being beaten up by the furious Immortal Lorcan. No, it should be said that Immortal Lorcan was trying to escape, but our primary tank was sticking too close to him. It was as if Adam was a ghost haunting Immortal Lorcan and annoying him at every step. Since we'd already reached this point, though, how could we possibly let him escape? And, to be honest, when all the magical markings in this location lit up, he had already lost the ability to escape. When Camdion prepared the final key for me and gave me a transformed thunder tear with apparent hesitation, a clear sound rang out that was rather uncomfortable to our senses. And as it rang out, the entire space began to transform into a forceful dimension. After the three God rank elemental items synchronized with each other, Immortal Lorcan was trapped in the middle of the triangle formation they formed. His elemental heart was currently synchronizing with the other three elemental items, creating a self-circulating elemental pocket dimension within. According to the explanation in the ancient scroll, this seal merely borrowed the basic structure of the elemental world. For the lives of elementals, their structures were their foundations. It constituted a basic instinct just like breathing. It was completely unavoidable, unstoppable, and even irresistible for them. That was also why Camdion had been so terrified. If we wanted to take this chance and seal him, it would definitely be possible. Needless to say, extra preparations were never wrong, and I was indeed prepared with a backup plan to seal him as well. But, of course, there was no need to make him into our enemy now. If it weren't for his help, we wouldn't have been able to stall Immortal Lorcan for such an extended period of time. But scaring the Wind Elemental God would be beneficial for our future cooperation. If he wanted to betray us in the future for some personal benefits, he would, at the very least, consider the potential consequences. Okay, I digress. All the magical markings were lighting up, and the naturally synchronizing elemental forces were creating a self-contained new world of its own. Now that it's come to this, I felt somewhat sad to lose two God-rank elemental items, and I was even more depressed at not having finished my system's missions, but it was all definitely worth it. At the very least, I was unable to think that Immortal Lorcan would be able to do anything else anymore. As for any losses to Camdion, who cared? He deserved it. It was his own fault for following us. Immortal Lorcan, such a day has come to you as well. I finally witnessed this day. Allow me to watch you be sealed. However, judging from Cambion's jeers, I knew that I had overthought. As long as he could defeat Immortal Lorcan, no matter what price he paid, it was obvious that Camdion was willing. It was then, however, that Immortal Lorcan broke out laughing. You all want to seal me? Dream on. Even if I die, I won't let you off easily. That familiar, furious laughter caused me to recall certain existences, such as those gnomes that were forced to the limit by city officials, or those gnomes who were forced by their debts into not even caring for their lives, or those gnomes who liked to gamble money on explosive barrels. That was why, In the very next instant, I pulled Adam in front of me and proceeded to hide behind Cambian's back. "You intend to push me into the fire again? Okay, should I say that he's already gotten to me doing this to him?" Even though he was complaining aloud, he didn't move at all, perfectly fulfilling his duty as a tank. Boom! Right as Immortal Lorcan finished speaking, a tremendous explosion occurred, caused the entire labyrinth to begin collapsing. The dust storm from the explosion made it difficult to see anything, and the massive wind and stone shards caused Adam to wail in pain. "I knew you didn't have any good intentions, always using me as your shield." Cough. I ignored that guy who always habitually complained as I turned my attention to the wind elemental god before me. "Is Immortal Lorcan dead?" "According to how you mortals would say, his body and soul have both been destroyed, so you could say he is dead. For us elemental gods, he probably just returned to the earth elemental plane." However, for him to have committed suicide by exploding his own physical body would take him at least 1 or 200 years to return to his original power. It won't mean anything by then when he finally returns. The cackling Camdian transformed into humanoid form, with absolute delight plastered on his face at having killed his mortal enemy. It was worth any price since he was now one step closer to being the top of all elementals. I nodded without saying much else, while I carefully recovered the 4 god rank elemental items. 4? Yep, 4, apart from the ocean's bottle and the emblem of fire. Camdian's Thunder Tear and Immortal Lorcan's gray-colored earth elemental heart were also recovered by me. After seeing these god rank elemental items, Camdian seemed to want to say something, but I shook them at him and pointed to the magical markings on the ground that were beginning to dim. It was obvious what I meant. "It'll be quite easy to use this magical seal again, would you like to try it? Or, do you intend to explode yourself just like Immortal Lorcan?" Okay, I could only think that to myself, but judging by how I see Camdian's expression had turned, it was obvious that he understood my threat. Traitors could never be trustworthy. If he could betray someone for personal benefits one time, he could betray another for even greater personal benefits a second time. From the very start, I had been prepared against Camdian. "Alright, my lord Camdian, could you please take us out of here?" Yet sometimes, even if you knew, in your heart, that you had a grudge against someone, it was better not to have the relationship sour out in the open. That way, you could still act as allies on the surface. In my past world, didn't the leaders of each major country, who each had legendary weapons called nukes, still smile and greet each other politely whenever they met each other in person? Of course, I'm never stingy towards my allies. "Come ride on me, my friends." And so, Camdian transformed into a whirlwind and effortlessly took us out of the labyrinth. Above ground, near the entrance of the labyrinth, we met with Margaret, who had been waiting for us for a long while. She breathed an obvious sigh of relief upon noticing our arrival. "My lord, Margaret used a teleport spell to help us escape. Unfortunately, she was unable to get a lock on your coordinates, so she was unable to support you. But since you came out successfully as she said you would, that must mean you have achieved victory." I nodded as I took out the earth elemental heart, producing deafening cheers from the knights. Even if the collapsing earth elemental labyrinth can act as evidence for Immortal Lorcan's defeat, only actual evidence of his defeat could release the pressure from everyone's minds. "Good job. Without you guys closing the earth elemental door, we wouldn't have been able to achieve victory. I shall reward you all after we return." However, everyone reacted strangely to my praise. They all glanced at each other awkwardly, as if they had something to say, yet nobody spoke up. It was Margaret who ended up explaining. "It's not that easy to close an elemental door. If I wasn't careful enough, I could have exploded the entire labyrinth or sent us all to a different plane. We just temporarily cut Immortal Lorcan's connection to the elemental door, but that seemed to have been enough." I was surprised to hear this, but I instantly gave a wry smile. Immortal Lorcan's death was rather pitiful. If he had remained calmer, perhaps he could have seen through us, as not even Cambian could deal with him. "Forget it, it's already over. There's no need to think too much about it." "Then do we need to go down there one more time to close the earth elemental door?" Margaret smiled as she shook her head. "That won't be necessary." The earth elemental door was being supplied by Immortal Lorcan's divine power, and since he's dead, it will collapse by itself. I nodded and was just about to introduce Cambion to everyone when the wind elemental god decided that it was time to leave. My human allies, let's have a good chat again after everything's over. His way of addressing us changed from human insects, to mortals, to human allies. For the wind elemental god to continually change was scary in its own way. Nevertheless, since we had been successful and had the advantage over him, I wasn't worried that he would play any tricks. And just as I slightly relaxed and was about to heave a sigh of relief, my ring shook and brought a new battlefield message to me. Roland, a sudden extreme earthquake has occurred in the area, causing all of Red Maple Castle's walls to collapse. Defending it has become almost impossible. Do you have any emergency ideas? Hearing this sudden call for help and the sounds of crying and shouting from the other side, I knew that the situation was now extremely unfavorable. You guys want to seal me? Dream on. Even if I die, I won't let you off easy. I thought back to Myrtle Lorcan's mysterious dying message, and I now realized that this was his true revenge. Margaret, you have the coordinates for Red Maple Castle, right? Could you teleport me there? You only need to teleport me. At the same instant that Myrtle Lorcan's physical body was destroyed, a stone shard in the Blooddock's tent had suddenly transformed into a shining ethereal giant. As it walked, this ethereal giant kept decreasing in luminosity. Cambion's judgment had been correct. Myrtle Lorcan had already been heading for death, and his current form was merely the final remnant of his soul. From the very beginning, the Earth Elementals were Ramon's Blooddock's tribe's allies, which was why Myrtle Lorcan had cut off a small piece of his arm and transformed it into a stone shard for Ammon to hold onto as the ace up their sleeve. In the final, critical moments of the battle you can summon my power, but remember, you're only allowed to summon me at the final critical moment. Otherwise, I'm going to take my anger out on you first. Currently, as he watched his divine power gradually diminish, Myrtle Lorcan, who had temporarily returned to life in his last vessel, knew that he didn't have much time remaining. Damned humans, since I'm fated to die anyways, I'm going to pull you all down with me. Boom. Boom. The incessant explosions caused substantial damages to the beastmen in the form of friendly fire, but no matter what, Myrtle Lorcan aimed to self-destruct once more and take his final revenge. Foolish humans, I, Myrtle Lorcan, shall cause you all to tremble as you meet your deaths. Rage, O Earth, for I am your master. Pledge your loyalty to me and transform that damned castle wall to broken pieces under the fires of my rage. And that was how Myrtle Lorcan finally lost his physical form once more and returned to the Earth Elemental plane riddled with injuries, forced to hibernate there until the next holy war. Yet his powerful final earthquake attack brought devastating destruction along with it. Yet this was just the beginning. Countless hordes of Earth Elementals emerged from the ground, their target to destroy the enemy of the Earth Elemental God. Red Maple Castle's defense line is under enormous stress. Chapter 186, Castle Defense. During the Middle Ages of my former world, fortresses and castle walls were considered the penultimate defenses of their time, but due to the eventual development of modern technology, they fell into disfavor and became nothing more than teardrops in history. Aerial bombings, long-distance artillery, large-scale weapons of mass destruction, and iron tanks that could forcefully break through walls all caused these immovable barriers to become obsolete. That was why these historical places of legend, which had been so significant in wars of past, were open to the public as scenic tourist spots in a relatively more peaceful era. The times will change, and with the emergence of new technology and species, the old maxims of battle will be nothing more than garbage. Even the strongest fortresses will become nothing more than scenic locations in the end. I had always believed that even if the development of magic and technology caused many differences between this world and my previous one, with the people here not inventing weapons like tanks and air bombers, high-ranked air cavalry served a similar purpose. It could ignore castle walls and lob destructive weapons, and with the progress of the engineer's technology in this world, a magical mechanical monstrosity was possible already. Since I had already based several magical mechanical monstrosities on the weapons from my previous world. As for weapons of mass destruction, weren't there already forbidden magic spells? Even though few mages could use forbidden spells, and the ones that dared to use them were even fewer, with the development of magic it didn't seem impossible for strong attack magic, that could affect even wars, to become commonplace. At least, I also based several insane magical weapons on ideas from my past world as well. For instance, undead carrying biological viruses, slimes carrying radiation, flying aerial fortresses of destruction, concealed biological poison gas weapons. Cough. As a believer in peace, let's just seal those obviously anti-human ideas away until the next Armageddon. Now back to the main topic. According to my judgment, I came up with a conclusion that was against the norm of this world. In the future, wars will enter a new generation where castle walls are irrelevant. That was why I took an entirely divergent path from the Slow Weaver Kingdom, which had spent so many resources on building high defense fortresses. No matter whether in the underground of the past or in the East Mist communal country in the future, I unhesitatingly abandoned the system of castle wall defense, which takes much time and energy to build. Instead, I spent my resources on developing new technologies, soldier types, and so on for practical combat. Defensive battles with solid castle walls as the foundation might just become nothing more than garbage swept away in history during this holy war. But the time for change wasn't now. Fortresses and castles seemed to be passive defensive structures, but in the era of limited weaponry, they were critically important. Whether it be for facing the cavalry attacks of nomadic tribes that were like the wind or defending against the beasts that would hunt prey in the darkness of the night, fortresses and castles were irreplaceable tactical centers. Defending the castle, and attacking the castle. This was the standard of countless battles. Not only were they obstacles in real life, but they were also mental protectors. The citizens living in the castle would definitely feel safe as they looked at the tall castle walls that offered them protection. Even if the era had already begun to change, castle walls weren't entirely outdated yet. Besides, humanity's stubborn habits were difficult to change, as most people still believed that the castle wall's destruction meant the loss of the battle. Currently, the Red Mabel defense line was being held entirely by the humans' morale. If their morale suffered a heavy blow, it's over. There's no hope anymore, we're all going to die. The person who was shouting out in such despair was no coward. It was coming from a general who had just killed dozens of beastmen in close combat, and he hadn't even had time to treat his injuries yet. But his shouts were just like that of a useless deserting soldier who didn't want to become cannon fodder. The castle walls weren't entirely destroyed by the earthquake, but numerous large cracks in it allowed the beastmen to enter as they pleased to catch and hunt the humans. The castle walls were now meaningless. The castle walls are destroyed is equal to the battle is lost. This was an iron maxim in the general's mind, and the subsequent mental breakdown caused this brave warrior to begin wailing in despair. There were many warriors similar to him. Even the most resolute of warriors instantly felt that the battle was already lost. Battle out in the open against the beastmen who had the numerical advantage. Each individual human couldn't match up to an individual beastman in strength already, and now they were also suppressed in terms of morale. This seemed suicidal. Never underestimate the experience and wisdom of the long-lived gods. Imrida Lorcan, who didn't seem to be much of a thinker, was actually a sly one. Even as a participant in the Holy War, he had not only paid attention to everything that was occurring without directly intervening, but he also had done his best to understand the combat situation. That was why he had viciously attacked the humans at their most significant weak spot in a critical time when he was destined to die. He knew that the fall of Red Mabel Castle would cause the most damage by far. If Red Mabel Castle fell, then there would be nothing else blocking the beastmen on the open fields, and it would definitely topple the balance of power between the two sides. The entire human allied army would be snowballed with continuous defeats, proceeding with the beastmen turning back, surrounding, and conquering Anchiwan. This would mean he would succeed in his revenge. Hurry up and run, the beastmen are coming. I can't stand it, we've stood here and fought them to this step already. Luckily, not everyone had abandoned hope. Perhaps a certain princess's bravery seemed idiotic and gave many people headaches, but her personality of never surrendering until the very end was still quite popular. The flag of the mist had yet to fall, and the people of the mist had experienced being pushed to the brink countless times. If even the slaughters of their cities couldn't scare them, then how could a simple castle wall's collapse scare them? Abandon the outer castle walls, everyone retreat to the inner city. The injured should go first, and whoever can still stand, block those bastards for me. Her roaring, angry voice, which still sounded quite young, sounded out from the top of the city, causing the warriors to wake up from their stupors and transmit her words. The dazed warriors soon began moving again. "We've already endured countless bloodbaths, now's not the time to give up." They instantly abandoned the outer castle walls that were about to collapse. Most of the residents were in the inner city to begin with, and the most number of people that needed to be transferred were the injured. As for the defending soldiers below the collapsed castle walls, they had no spare time right now to clean up the mess of stone shards. The more critical the situation, the higher the importance of an ace card. Finally, the people of the Mist used their last trump card. Great Judgment. The God Equipment Book of Origins was activated, and a silver holy light instantly covered the entire city. As the beastmen were judged guilty of the crime of invasion, all the beastmen immediately felt a restriction to their freedom, and they suffered under invisible handcuffs, leg irons, weapon confiscations, and many other similar constraints. Unfortunately, though, before Woomians became the guardian god of the Northlands, the Church of Law had no reason to interfere in this battle. The members of the Church of Law in Red Maple Castle consisted only of a few of Ren's companions. There was minimal benefit gained from increasing their powers. Yet even the effect of just restraining the enemy was enough. At a time like this, when every second was crucial, every minute that the beastmen were stalled would help more soldiers retreat to the inner city, where additional warriors were constructing new defensive structures. Notify the Borealis to attack with full firepower. We need aerial support. Overload the Train King, and give these damned beastmen a nice present. In this time of danger, Ren showed her true leadership abilities. She didn't need a vast amount of wisdom or experience. As long as she could remain calm and think of ideas to deal with the situation, it would be enough to reassure everyone. The chaos outside the western castle door was pacified under Ren's leadership. As everyone watched regretfully, the overloaded Train King was tossed down the castle wall. Boom! Yet another mushroom cloud rose up on the battlefield. The violent explosion sent even the entire castle door flying and vaporized those beastmen who were in the midst of crossing through it. The massive hole could even be used as a makeshift moat now, but everyone had been taken away by the floating airships to reconstruct new defensive structures in the inner city. They were now at a distance from the staggering castle walls. Finally, the castle walls collapsed entirely, crushing a significant number of beastmen with it. At this time, Ren was silently cursing the beastmen as she stood inside the floating airship as she gazed at the pile of rubble. "Damn beastmen! I'm going to make sure your souls eternally struggle painfully in the river Styx." Wait, what did I just say? What is the river Styx? If she could look at herself in a mirror right now, Ren would be even more shocked. The current Ren had blood-red eyes, and the ethereal black wings on her back were beginning to materialize. Behind her, a ghostly black figure could be seen cackling maniacally. "Ha ha, the seed has finally sprouted." Even though it was now late into the night, Anshuran's Mage Guild was rather hectic. In the field in front of the Mage Tower, hundreds of mages were busy etching innumerable magical runes into the ground. Large amounts of precious resources were being utilized, and dragon blood was being used for drawing the runes, which was a difficult and expensive material. Their precious magical cup of flames was being used as lighting, and even the archmages were crouching on the ground, researching the incredibly rare magical rune arrays. Is it still not ready yet? Do you think that mega long distance teleportation is supposed to be easy? Let me tell you, this precision has no difference from opening a door to another dimension. Just one small miscalculation will cause you to be tossed into another dimension. Sit there and don't move. I need to calculate your weight. The women passing by kept covering their mouths and snickering, and even the mages seemed to be trying their best not to laugh. It was only natural because my current appearance was a fresh humiliation for me. I kept shivering due to the cold winds as I was only wearing a piece of underwear. Wait, let me first explain that I was not infected by Xuity. Stop shaking. How am I supposed to measure your weight like this? Oh my, you're a bit overweight, a tad too heavy for my spell's power. You still need to lose weight. I was currently shivering on top of a large balance that was originally used to measure the weight of magical ingredients. Strange dragon blood runes could be seen drawn all over my body. How else was I supposed to lose some weight? I hesitatingly reached to my final piece of clothing, but seeing as how more and more spectators were gathering around me and that those two women were covering their eyes but secretly peeking at my bottom half, I found myself unable to remove my underwear. You're overweight by too much, just your underwear alone won't be enough. Let's shave off all your hair and your eyebrows. The cold Margaret adjusted her glasses as she made a pragmatic, yet fatal, decision. I have to shave everything? For some reason, I thought of the smooth shell of an egg. Having a smooth round head will be cool in the summer. In winter, you can even reflect the sunlight and obtain warmth that way. How nice! You can even save money on the lighting at nighttime, and that blinding bullet of light technique will even have double its power. Adam, stop finding such stupid reasons for me to become bald. If you want to reflect the sunlight, go do it yourself. Adam, who was watching from the side, was already rolling on the floor with laughter. Those ridiculous words could only be said by someone like him, or perhaps I should say that only he was such a boring person. Yet my hemming and hawing was causing Margaret's expression to become icier and icier. Her displeasure was evident. Is there any other method? Hand. Instantly, I felt an ache in my heart. Cutting off my hand to decrease my weight, that seemed like the only method left to me. After some hesitation, I withdrew the Roland sacred sword, and measured it against my hand for quite some time, before finally chucking the sword to Adam. Adam, do it for me. I'm afraid of pain. I shut my eyes and waited for quite a while, but I only heard the sounds of giggling. When I opened my eyes, I saw that Adam and Margaret were exchanging strange looks with each other. Stop wasting time, we don't have much time to spare. Hurry up with the sword, I can just find a priest later to reattach my hand. Wait, why are you guys laughing? Ha ha ha. Hearing this, Adam began laughing to the point that he had difficulty breathing, while Margaret readjusted her glasses. Why are you trying to cut your hand off? It's not necessary, or were you intending to replace it with a hook and pretend to be a pirate captain? Then what about the weight? Were you just having a joke on me? Can you teleport me already? No, I never joke about anything related to magic. As always, Margaret wore a serious expression with that icy gaze of hers that would easily send chills through anyone's heart. She was definitely serious. Your current weight is a bit too much, but when I said hand, I was referring to the age ring on your hand. I instantly understood. If the current me was overweight by just a little, the younger me definitely wouldn't be. Just removing the age ring would be enough. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Did you just want to see me suffer? Hey, wait a moment. I still have. I was quite angry as I hurriedly removed my ring, but before I could even articulate my complaints, Margaret's staff swung downwards and the light of the teleportation spell enveloped me. Now, I could only hurriedly pick up my Roland sacred sword and prepare myself as I helplessly accepted the fact that I had been pranked. After I left, the field fell silent again. Adam suddenly spoke up. Was that fun? Of course. This bastard actually forgot about me again. What a terrible friend. It's annoying to be treated like a stranger. The Oracle, who always seemed so calm, actually had such a fiery, angry side to her. Immediately afterward, though, Margaret's expression turned dark as she burst out laughing. Well, it's not entirely his fault, so let's just let the past be the past. And even if he forgot the past, we just have to create new memories. This should probably give him a deep impression of me. Adam could only helplessly shake his head before turning to look southwards. The final critical battle involving the entire fate of the Northlands would take place in that direction. I wonder if Roland will be able to deal with things by himself. It won't be easy. HMPH, he won't be there by himself. Did you forget about Amelia and that cat? Why do you think they disappeared for so long? That Roland brat is ridiculously cautious. He must have left several trump cards up his sleeve that nobody knows about. And just as she expected, right then and there, in the market district of Red Maple Castle, a certain witch had finished her final pre-combat preparations. Oh my, I ended up using so many resources. I should ask my junior to pay me back for all this later. My babies, it's time to wake up and eat. Relax, this time your food isn't going to be those zombies that are difficult to chew. Let's play Plants vs Beastmen this time. Chapter 187, The Feast of Traitors. It was currently night. Everything was blanketed with heavy snowfall, making this frozen area even more difficult to withstand. Even the strongest warrior would be unable to do anything without the sense of sight. Yet that wasn't the most critical negative aspect of this battlefield. It's so cold. How many can even live through such a night? Even the bear tribe leader Lond, who seemed like an immovable ice mountain to his tribe members, was not as emotionless and made of iron as he appeared. After all, in the frigid winter of the Northlands, nighttime was more than 10 degrees colder than the already chilly weather, and it was now reaching the point where one's breath would freeze immediately. Even if the beastmen on the battlefield all had strong bodies, they were nevertheless living creatures. They still had to pay attention to the cold during the fierce battling, and it was so dark that they needed their battle horns and flags to lead them. The most difficult of all was the alleyway battles, where, in the darkness, some would treat the enemy knife-wielding assassins as their friends while slicing off their comrades' heads with their own axes. In such a situation, according to the unwritten rules of combat in the North, both sides should have rested and come to a temporary truce to prevent the most unacceptable outcome of all, the outcome where one side won but there was nobody left to celebrate. Now, however, time was of the essence. Time equaled life itself. With each minute of hesitation, countless lives perished. Don't even mention a temporary truce. Right now, both sides wanted to hurl every last possible weapon at their enemy. Only the utter and complete destruction of the enemy would allow the existence of more survivors. Lon could already imagine the scene. A beastman warrior would defeat an enemy with great difficulty, but his blood, pouring from his injuries, would freeze into ice. He would lose large amounts of blood as his steps would grow slower and slower before he finally froze to death beside the desolate corpse of his human opponent. To Lond, these dark alleyways resembled the vicious beasts from the abyss with their mouths wide open, as they grinned maniacally while they waited for food to deliver themselves into their mouths. Lon suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He had an ominous premonition. Perhaps he wouldn't live to see the next day's rising sun. This, however, wasn't baseless at all. Lon's sharp sixth sense had helped him overcome numerous life and death situations, but this time, he decided not to listen to his instinct's warning. Don't let the other tribes look down on our tribe's sharp claw. Everyone, press forward. We definitely can't fall behind the others. Conquer this castle, and the honor of having destroyed the northern humans' pride will be ours. The war god is protecting us. His heroic spirit shall keep spots aside for our warriors, and if we're destined to die here, then let us meet each other again while feasting in the Hall of Valhalla. He said something he knew was impossible. Yet his warriors still answered his summons. They silently drank some rich alcohol to help them defend against the cold, before resolutely stepping into the pitch-black battlefield, into the maw of the abyss from which there would be no return. There was no hesitation and no cowardice. This war had no justice, there was nothing divine, nothing evil. Everyone was fighting for their own species, fighting for resources and land. They were fighting so that their own species wouldn't have to fight in this cruel holy war. The castle wall was now meaningless. Every moment, at every place, warriors could be seen bleeding and fighting to the death. Human lives were now worthless. Humans were all flesh and blood mortals. After all, even a high-ranked battlefield commander may be killed at any moment from an ordinary shovel making its way through the crack of a house. We've lost contact with Kazlow's tribe. 20 minutes ago, we also lost contact with Kagra. The air cavalry is requesting to go to battle. This is their letter signed in blood. Lond is requesting reinforcements. He lost contact with 2 squads under his command, and he's met with an obstacle. Many of his warriors have gone missing. He needs more warriors to be able to surround the enemy. The Wolf King has been successful in advancing to the designated location as scheduled, but he's already lost 40% of his warriors, and he still refuses to retreat. Each fresh dose of bad news caused Amon's eyes to twitch. Humanity's stubbornness had far surpassed their expectations, and the damp snow created an even worse meat grinder for the cruel battlefield. Tell the air cavalry to not stir up any trouble for me right now. If they go out now, they'll fall right back down immediately without even a hint of what hit them. Even if they die, they need to die a worthy death. Reinforcements? Let the newly created tribe go support Lond. The messenger hesitated for a moment and was about to question Ammon when he ended up swallowing his words. Newly created tribe? That was the tribe consisting of the tribes that had lost almost all their tribe members. All those beastmen were injured losers. They had lost their tribe leaders, their tribe names, and totems, which was why they had banded together and formed a new tribe. Perhaps they weren't strong enough, but they were still the seeds of the future. But when even the seeds had to participate in battle, that was evidence of the dire straits the beastmen were in. However, going against orders would be insubordination, and everybody understood that this was no time for hesitation and that the decisive would be victorious. Whoever gritted their teeth and stayed in this until the end would become the new ruler of this land, and now was the time to compete and who was willing to sacrifice more and had the stronger will. The beastmen were enduring tremendous sacrifices, but for the humans, this war was even more difficult. This chaotic battle with no rules was an all-around test of people's abilities. After the defending human army lost the advantage of the castle wall's defense, their losses were magnified many times, to double, triple, and even 10 times their original rates. We have nowhere to retreat. Other than us, there are only the weaponless citizens. If we lose Red Maple Castle, there's no difference from losing the entire Northlands, and we'll become the most vilified humans in all of human history. All our ancestors will be shamed. The humans were unwilling to retreat even more than the beastmen. This defensive battle for them wouldn't allow them to withdraw one bit. They were guarding their homes. The snow would eventually stop, and the sky would eventually get lighter. But at that time, who knew just how many humans could survive? The side that ended up with more survivors would definitely be the victor. But this night wouldn't pass quickly. The frigid nightmares were all riled up to move in the darkness. In a small alleyway, a beastman soldier only gave a shout of surprise before disappearing without a single trace. In an adjacent alleyway, the exact same thing happened to his companions. With their shouts of surprise, they were also dragged into hell by the dark hands that suddenly reached out from below the ground. Shamans, destroy this entire area for me. Lond was no longer able to watch his subordinates disappearing in succession. Under his command, the beastmen elemental shamans no longer tried conserving their already low mana, and they communicated with the elements to summon mighty thunderbolts and waves of earthquakes to flatten all the buildings in this entire area. Of course, this helped reveal the true identity behind the beastmen soldiers' disappearance. Flowers? Right before them was a flower. In fact, it was an incredibly rare and valuable flower in the Northlands. Luckily, Lon had learned about such a flower in the south before. The flower stem and colorful petals matched the ones in his memory, but isn't this too huge? That's right. A flower garden could be seen before them. It was only that the flowers within it were rather abnormal. The magic spells that even destroyed all the buildings had zero effect on them, and the most common flowers among them were sunflowers that were growing larger and larger. They were at least the height of 2 humans, and these otherwise ordinary seeming flowers were already more than 3 times taller than they should have been. Even though these flowers before them were so beautiful, Lond, who had experienced hundreds of battles, sucked in a breath of cold air. The incredibly strange sight caused his sixth sense feel an indescribable amount of danger. It was to the point where he felt needles pricking his back. All he wanted was to run away. Hey, isn't that the missing soldier Qatar? Those flowers are currently eating him. The moment these words were spoken, all the flowers suddenly turn around in unison. Those flowers actually had huge mouths growing on them, and they were currently chewing on the beastmen's missing soldiers as their fertilizer. Each flower only had one huge mouth filled with teeth, and even though these flowers had no eyes, the beastmen quickly realized that the flowers had locked their targets, them. That was the instinct of prey that had met its predator. I'll be the rear vanguard. The incredibly abnormal scene sent chills through everyone's hearts, and Lond instantly gave his order. But right at the next moment, his beastmen companions began wailing in agony. The vines on the ground had transformed into snake-like creatures as they hung the beastmen upside down. The sunflowers opened their mouths wide and began devouring the unfortunate beastmen. King's heavy assault. The angrily roaring bear tribe leader used his full force attack, with his 2 thick arms slamming into the ground with enough force to crush boulders. The wind from his attack ripped through the vines, helping create a gap in the plant's attacks as his god-rank ultimate attack destroyed everything before him. Even after his ultimate attack, though, he could discern nothing but his companions' deaths and heard only their cries of death. It's alright. Hurry up, this place is far too abnormal. We need to leave here quickly. He was kneeling halfway to the ground and was recovering from the usage of his ultimate attack when he noticed the strong hints of despair on the faces of his tribe members. When he turned around to see what they were looking at, He finally realized the reason for his instincts to have been continuously screaming at him that something was wrong. A small mountain, which was not that far away from them, was rapidly closing in, while the place he was standing on was sinking. When he took a closer look, he realized that that wasn't a small mountain at all. It was obviously a frighteningly large mouth. We had been standing in this monster's mouth all this time? His final sigh was now meaningless. The sky was still dark when the Piranha Plant King finally closed its mouth. With a loud crunch, the Bear King yawned, who was only one rank below the Beastman King, perished just like that. Humble of the 7 virtues. Perhaps I should call it by another name. Blood-filled Piranha Plant Garden might be a bit more appropriate. Since the worst possible situation had already come to pass, and the time previously agreed upon had come, the Black Cat, which was destined to bring misfortune, had also woken up from its deep slumber. Ha, what a bunch of lovely children. They just need so much blood to wake up, though. If it weren't for the availability of so much delicious blood, they definitely wouldn't have grown up this well. Humble. 7 virtues? The most unbelievable thing of all was that this witch, who gave everyone such a headache, could really create such a positive, auspicious object. Humble wasn't a single plant, it was the name of an entire flower garden that consisted of uncountable piranha plants as its foundation. Its only trait, perhaps, was its incredibly high attack rating. From the very beginning of this war, Amelia had planted a single seed under Red Maple Castle. As for how well this seed would mature depended on the amount of blood and souls it could feed on. Roland's Pride Omar Mist was doubtlessly the strongest combat unit. He functioned at the level of an entire squad by himself. Amelia had wanted to target Omar's capabilities and had hence designed this piranha plant garden, which was also on the level of an entire squad. She had even given it a name that directly opposed that of the 7 deadly sins. These piranha plants had special digestive chemicals that could easily melt through bones, and the garden also possessed soul grass, which could consume souls and render the undead mage's soul summoning spells useless. The amount of nutrition gained from the war would determine the final rank of the Piranha Plant King, and the humongous devourer wasn't supposed to be ready until after the end of the war. Even without an endless amount of battles occurring, this war, without a doubt, gave Amelia's Humble far too much nutrition. Several humongous devourers were already activated, and the dangerous flower garden had awakened itself and was waiting for new prey to deliver itself to its doorstep. The Bear King Lon's death was just one among many. Oh my, it seems that after all this, you're going to go up in the calamity rankings. HMPH. No matter how high up I go, I won't surpass Roland. I'm still far from being as crazed, inhumane, and maniacal as he is. Harlois really wanted to comment on why Amelia was filled with a regretful expression. It was as if she was sad that she couldn't surpass him in the calamity rankings. Did Amelia and Roland really want to compete in who was more inhumane between the two of them? You really like to compete with him in everything. Do you like him that much? Who did you say likes him? I hate him to death. Just wait until I receive information on his technology. I'm going to turn him into my fertilizer. The moment that Roland was brought up, the sly Amelia would become just like an elementary school student that had never even talked about romance before. Harlois still wanted to tease her a bit more when Amelia, who had been angrily jumping up and down, suddenly stopped and smiled as she gazed out the window. What is it? How unexpected. It actually caught a big fish. But that berserk behemoth is still a bit of a problem. I'm going to deploy 2 small devourers there. Yep. Let's not kill that behemoth off, it should be an incredibly rare undead material. Roland will definitely be delighted. Perhaps he'll even invite me to dissect it while it's living together with him. Ah, I'm really getting nostalgic about the past. Okay, now that she was imagining things, Amelia smiled rather shyly, and Harlois didn't even know where to vent her comments. Suddenly, however, Amelia's expression changed as she made an exclamation of shock. Devourers number 2 and number 4 were instantly killed. This feeling is from the withering magic of nature magic, from those elves. Traitors could never be trusted. This was a maxim of the battlefield. If you could betray someone once, it was highly possible that you would betray another a second time if you were paid with even greater benefits. No matter in whichever world history, there would always be traitors who received high positions of power in the end, even if they could never gain true trust from the eventual victor. The present from Carwins? It was just another letter, just like the one to Roland. However, the letter, which was personally sent by the Abyssal Prince Carwins, was addressed to Lorsai. Okay then, there is no need to go into the details of the letter. It was basically just something like, we already know about the ideas you're having. Didn't Roland simply promise that you could be the main god of the elves? We can give you a better deal. Since you anyways haven't openly betrayed us, if you return to the chaos side, we won't care about your past transgressions, and we can even make the elven gods your subordinates. Well, it was something like that. Of course, there was a threat at the end as well, reminding Lorsai that her domain was in the Chaos Abyss and that she should be careful of the demon nobles organizing themselves and paying her a little visit. Something along those lines. Lorsai was, of course, the founder of the Dark Elves, but she was also the one they all imitated. In the Dark Elves language, foolishness and loyalty were the same word. It is easy to imagine Lorsai's personality from this itself. And so Lorsai, who had betrayed the Chaos side once already, unhesitatingly betrayed the Honor side now that she was promised an even greater prize. Of course, this was only part of the reason. On a deeper level, Lorsai wasn't satisfied with receiving the title of the Guardian God of the Northlands Elves. She wanted to be the Guardian God of the entire Northlands, which was the title that Woomians had just received. In that case, unless she forced the humans out of the Northlands, she would be unable to become its real ruler. And so, right after achieving victory in internal conflict between the elves and the Dark Elves, she unhesitatingly gave the beastmen a gift when they needed it most. Perhaps it should be said that since she already reached her goal in allying with us in the first place, and now that there was something she coveted even more right in front of her, she decided to turn on us and directly fight against us for what she wanted. Carwins's letter was only an excuse to help her firm her resolve to betray once again. Currently, Lorsai's new pet who had her favor, the high-level nature mage who had just wiped out the two humongous devourers, was standing beside Emmon, sighing, as he gazed at everything before him. I never expected that we would end back here again after going around. Ha, it's just that the last time you were my ally, you still looked presentable. Now you're my ally's pet dog, you can only lick the bones she throws to you. Ammon Bloodox didn't hold back at all as he taunted the elf mage in front of him. Ammon truly looked down on this untrustworthy and dishonorable elf, especially since this person had even betrayed his own species, despite the fact that he was once a king. Yep, this long-eared elf mage was indeed once King Adrian of Tassel Kingdom, but now, his skin color had become a grayish-black, and he was no longer a regal moon elf. Instead, he belonged to a new species that dedicated themselves to Lorsai, the fallen elves. He used to look down on the beastmen in the past, but Hadrian was now faced with Ammon's jeers. He could only turn around with a steely expression. I wasn't wrong, I wasn't wrong, this is all for the continuation of my species. I wasn't wrong, I wasn't wrong. It's just that his fingernails had already begun to imperceptibly overtake his hands. He didn't even notice the blood. Chapter 188, Descent. The Seal of Unlimited Courage. It was terribly named, but this seal had left a significant mark on history, if only because it was Carwins's sole imprint. As long as you resolutely believe you won't lose, you'll become stronger. Are you the hot-blooded main character type? Also, what's with this terrible naming sense of yours that sounds like it was plagiarized from somewhere? Should I help you come up with a new name? No need. Precedents indicate that if you come up with a name, it'll definitely be a forever humiliating one. I'm not that foolish. Back then, Carwins had answered me like that, but from a certain perspective, I wasn't wrong. This ability was indeed just like one that belonged to the main character of a legendary story, never giving up and becoming stronger and stronger as long as he didn't give up in his heart. When he was pushed to the brink, when fate forced him to face armies by himself, this would be the most suitable ability of all. If this ability was possessed by an ordinary person, well, humans had limited courage and willpower, so the rise in strength would be limited. But in the hands of Carwins, who didn't know fear and difficulty, this was the mightiest soul imprint in the world. God rank? Great Demon Lord? Won't they all die if I slice off their heads? As long as they can die and feel pain, what's the difference? As he proclaimed such, Carwins was maniacally laughing on the battlefield with a mountain of bloody corpses behind him. In front of that insane bringer of death, even the demons who never knew fear became afraid, even the beastmen who still had a war god protecting them became afraid, and even the human allied armies that were attacking the Mist Kingdom became afraid. Legend rank beastmen, behemoths. Won't they all die if I slice off their heads? As long as they bleed and feel pain, how are they any different from ordinary humans? The young Princess Knight's solitary figure could be seen on top of the fortification as she single-handedly blocked the beastmen's charge. Her silver armor was stained entirely red with the fresh blood of her enemies. Innumerable beastmen corpses surrounded her, making it troublesome to take even a step forward. And right now, impaled on her longsword, was the corpse of the Wolf King. Inconceivably, not far away was the body of the beheaded behemoth. Next, the furious Princess Knight stood upright as she clutched onto her sword, while the beastmen warriors in front of her were beginning to hesitate about whether to retreat. 30 minutes ago, this seemingly weak girl had shouted next. And many beastmen warriors had rushed up to fight her, only to be slaughtered. Next. 20 minutes ago, a behemoth caused earthquakes as it roared and rushed to her by itself. It had decided to crush the tiny human before it. Yet a single slice was all it took for her to crush its throat. It died a painful death. Next. 5 minutes ago, the pride of the wolf tribe, the strongest of them all, the Wolf King Sostillo, had charged towards her along with his personal bodyguards. He was killed with a single swing of her sword. Next. When they heard the shout of the silver-armored Princess Knight once more, the brave beastmen finally retreated. While they weren't afraid of sacrifice, the sacrifices had to, at least, be meaningful. Our princess, the world's greatest princess. Princess Knight, may you live forever. Ren's vision was currently blurry, and her blood was boiling. The cheering from behind her seemed to be distant, and only one thought was coursing through her mind. I need more power, I want more power. She was seeking more power within her soul, for her soul imprint. When the light of the incantation of Law Great Judgment lit up the entire city, the gold-ranked Law Knight Trin was promoted in rank by the forbidden spell, but this type of forced promotion shouldn't have been able to aid her in creating a soul imprint. But not only did she succeed in creating a soul imprint, it was a soul imprint of unimaginable strength, the seal of unlimited courage. Yep, Ren's soul imprint was exactly the same as Carwin's, in both name and power. Logically speaking, this was supposed to be impossible. Soul imprints were the accumulation of a person's experience and understanding and constituted the foundation for their future growth. It was impossible for entirely identical soul imprints to appear unless the two people had exactly the same lives, personalities, and souls. Yet this theoretically impossible occurrence did indeed materialize. And something even more abnormal happened right afterward. After the effects of Great Judgment receded, Ren's power level should have returned to normal, but the current Ren do not only not return to the gold rank, but her strength was actually increasing further. This definitely isn't an ordinary legend strength, perhaps not even divine warriors could be her opponents. Her battle experience and power level are perfect. I had never expected Princess Ren to hide her power to such an extent. Many aspects went into a person's real combat power, such as experience, strength, combat wisdom, special abilities, and basic stats. An overall balance was exceedingly rare, yet not only were Ren's basic stats growing at an astonishing rate, but her combat experience and combat instincts, abilities that could only be accumulated over time, were also improving at a staggering speed. Oh, so continually swinging a sword like this must be the trick to becoming a sword saint. Identifying the location of the enemy's side must be what Trollin meant by anticipating the enemy's moves. This type of growth had far surpassed the limits of human knowledge. It was as if Ren's body already known all this to begin with, and she had only forgotten it all. It seemed like her memories were reawakening. Amid the numerous cheers, Elisa was the only one feeling doubtful. Everyone believed Ren to be showing off her true power, but Elisa naturally knew the level that Ren's strength was supposed to be. Instantaneous growth to this extent was unexplainable. The Wolf King Sostillo was a wolf tribe warrior almost at the saint rank. He's much more difficult to deal with than a dragon or a behemoth, especially on the ground, and even he was slain in a single blow. Elisa already had her guess as to what was happening. She was hesitating whether or not to give this body up and kill the Ren before her, to prevent Carwin's malicious plot from coming to fruition. Ren suddenly turned towards Elsia as if she had noticed Elisa's thoughts. The killing intent on Ren's eyes caused Elisa to tremble, while her dark yellow-colored eyes could only be explained by one thing. This feeling, it must be the demon prince. The black wings were materializing, and the black demon was already laughing in midair as all his preparations had finally completed. With the descent of Carwin's will, Ren's own consciousness became hazier and hazier. She felt like she wanted to just have some sleep. I must protect this city. This place is critical to the safety of the entire Northlands. My body is getting hotter and hotter, but I feel like I'm becoming stronger. Right, I want more power, more. You want power? Do you want enough power to overcome any dire situation? Would you like strength so powerful that it can destroy everything? Through the haziness, Ren heard an intimate voice from the will residing deep in her bloodline. Even though she was half unconscious, Ren gave her reply. Can I become stronger if I obtain power? Brother Roland always calls me an idiot. Maybe I don't have the talent to become strong. No. Don't look down on yourself. The strength of your bloodline is that of the strongest. You have the ability to become even stronger. No, it should be said that you were born with the ability to stand on top of the world. As long as you sign a contract with me, you'll have the most powerful strength in the world. No, no, forget it. Brother Roland has said before that if anyone mentions signing a contract, I should directly refuse. I shouldn't listen to any advertisers' sales pitches as they're all a bunch of scammers that want to fool you into signing a contract. And I also think my current power level is enough. Even though her mind was already in a daze, her half-conscious reply caused Carwin to be struck dumb. When he spoke up again, it was apparent that he was in a rush and was beginning to get angry and panic. As a descendant of the mist, can't you have more of a backbone? With power, you can have everything. You can defeat those damned beastmen, you can protect your own people, you can become the hero of the world, you can control your own fate, you can have everything you want. Can I have Roland praise me? He always says I'm stupid, but Ren isn't stupid at all. Carwin was stunned speechless again. His following statement was made out of helplessness. Yes, Roland will praise you. I promise. Okay, I'll sign the contract then. With the agreement of her will, her bloodline transformed into the most robust connection of all, forming an indescribable link between the two souls. A tremendous will then descended upon this world. Oh my, it's so difficult to come here. Ren, no, Carwin made his first comment as he returned. There is no such thing as coincidence. There is only the inevitable. Many things that seemed like coincidence were actually well-prepared plans. Looking exactly like an ancestor after countless generations of genetic inheritance? How could that possibly be a coincidence? From the very start, Ren didn't look like Roland but resembled Carwin instead. That familiar figure was the result of the Abyssal Prince controlling his own bloodline from another plane. From the very start, Ren was a vessel that Carwin had prepared for himself. From a certain standpoint, apart from the different gender, this body was genetically identical to the body that Carwin had possessed when he was still a human. It was basically a magic clone, which was the best possible vessel for his soul. This body has grown to the legend rank. This is much nicer than that Fismer's body. The Abyssal Prince was far too strong, and even the descent of his will was capable of distorting the world. His previous descent had only been for a few short minutes, but it had utterly destroyed Fismer's body. If Carwin wanted to control a physical body and roam around freely in this plane, the body needed to reach certain specifications. With this soul imprint, there's no need to worry about combat strength, nor is there any need to worry about this body over-exceeding its physical capabilities and collapsing. Having Ren reach legend rank in strength and awaken the exact same soul imprint constituted the most critical part of Carwin's preparations. The seal of unlimited courage would vastly increase the growth potential of this body, to the point where it could truly host a strong will such as his own. In a way, Roland's efforts actually created the path for Carwin's descent. Ren would not have reached the gold rank so quickly if it weren't for that system's speed growth mode. She consequently would not have benefited from the incantation of Law Great Judgment to such an extent, and she wouldn't have entered the legend rank at this point and fulfilled the requirement for Carwin's will to descend upon her. Right now, the black mist around Ren was swallowed up, and she stood back up as the space around her distorted. When she opened her eyes, the entire world suddenly changed. The snow stopped, and countless clouds shrouded the clear moonlight. Thunder and lightning began lashing out from the skies, and the snow mountain in the distance started trembling. The fire on its mountaintop seemed to bear witness to its transformation into a volcano. The hyperactive ground started trembling yet again with a new round of earthquakes. An untold number of birds and beasts escaped from their habitats. It was as if they were aware of the arrival of the apocalypse and that it would be difficult to escape with their lives. Merely his existence could change the world. Even if this was only a vessel of will, it was power at the level of a true god. At this moment, Carwins pulled out his sword, lifted his head, and chuckled at the assassin coming at him from above. "Roland, I said that we would meet each other really soon, but I bet you never thought it would be this soon." The Roland's sacred sword produced a lustrous arc in the air as the two silver swords viciously clashed against each other. The smiling younger brother provided a contrast to the naked older brother who started to shout angrily. "Ren, I told you not to believe the salesman. Those combo deals are never good deals, they are just scams." "See, now your voice is a man's, but your body is still a woman's. How disgusting." "If you want to be a man, you can't tell me. I have the secret medicine from the spring of a drowned man superscript 1. It's painless, harmless, has no dangerous side effects, and will take effect in just 1 second." "Okay." After hearing a response that he definitely did not expect, Carwins's smiling face changed to one of confusion. Note: 1. This is a Ranma Japanese manga series, reference, not an actual location. The water from the mystical spring of a drowned man can turn anyone into a man. In Ranma, the main character falls into the spring of a drowned girl and turns into a girl. Chapter 189, Brothers and Misunderstanding. It was as if time had left no traces on them at all and the wheel of fate had completed a full turn. After 377 years, on the very soil of their homeland, the two brothers had finally reunited. Yet, unfortunately, I had no intention of being nostalgic about the past. My longsword clearly declared my intentions. Before my silver Roland sacred sword could even approach him, however, Carwins merely waved his hand, creating a terribly strong gust that blew me far away. There's such a great difference between us. Even though I had been expecting the disparity between us to be vast, being swatted away like a fly was still rather depressing. Even if Carwins's vessel was only at the legend rank, that cheat-like soul imprint would limitlessly increase his power. It was too ridiculous. It allowed Carwins to utilize power far surpassing that of his vessel. With his true power level, which was above a true god's, combined with an appropriate vessel, even a true god who risked death to descend to the mortal plane might not be enough to deal with him. As for me, I had just reached the silver rank, and this wasn't even mentioning the fact that I had used up a significant amount of fate points to speedily increase my power to deal with Immortal Lorcan. I still needed quite some time to improve my foundation. "Roland, have you still not realized the truth? Strength is everything. The current you is just like you in the past, pathetically weak. If I had as much power as today as in the past, I would never have ended up like that." Carwins was obviously proud as he bragged about his power. His attitude was exactly as it was in the past. "You're so old already, stop acting so immature." But even though I was unsatisfied, I still returned the Roland sacred sword to its sheath. As for why, I already knew that I wouldn't be able to defeat him. Besides, I had many questions I wanted to ask him, and according to my understanding of him, he would probably respond to anything I asked. Is it really that fun to destroy the Mist Kingdom with the help of outsiders? This was just a test question, but Carwin shrugged with a visible expression of indifference. Who cares? It has nothing to do with me and nor did I cause it. Did you think that I was the one behind it all? You were wrong. Although I was rather surprised to hear this, it was still to be expected. Moreover, Carwins was always one who looked down on lying, so if he said he wasn't the one, then he was most likely telling the truth. The current two living royals of the Mist are both my descendants. For a demon, blood-related descendants are treasures that are difficult to come by. Perhaps my next backup vessel will have to come from them as well, so why would I kill them off? Honestly, without my interference, the East Mist communal country would have been destroyed several times over already. How's that possible? 2 years ago, When the East Mist communal country was on the verge of destruction with enemies already invading the capital, they were still able to counterattack from the brink of destruction. Did you really think that little Wren could accomplish that by herself? Carwins rolled his eyes with a condescending expression. It appeared that he was displeased with the recent descendants of the mist. I was speechless after hearing this. I knew that Carwins was referring to the previous beastmen attack. At that time, the previous king had been killed, and Wren had somehow managed to display exceptional talent in commanding the army, chasing the beastmen for thousands of kilometers and winning the beautiful title of Princess Knight. I asked the soldiers who had taken part back then. While the previous Wren was indeed incredible, she had not personally fought in combat and had only deployed expert military strategic techniques coupled with an extraordinary anticipation of the enemy's moves to send the beastmen packing. But, unfortunately, it seemed as though her genius was all used up, as the hereafter that was only ordinary in performance. Of course, I had also asked Wren herself. How we won. I don't really know either. I felt like my head was really clear back then, and various demonic ideas came into my head one after the other, and I just followed the ideas and won. Brother Roland, am I really talented after all? I'm a genius, right? Yes, you're really talented and a genius. Back then, I could only woodenly nod my head in confusion. Looking back on it now, though, the truth had been unknown to everyone. In reality, through his own bloodline, Carwins had personally guided the Mist army towards victory, giving Wren the chance to become famous. Of course, the Demon Prince wouldn't do something for nothing. He probably did it for the sake of his vessel that he was now using. Then, what about the beastmen this time? They came south by themselves to steal back their homeland. In their eyes, it's only natural, it's the will of their ancestors. It, of course, has nothing to do with me. The elves? That has even less to do with me. You know that I'm allergic to those long ears who speak in such feminine voices. They went seeking death on their own. Whose fault is that? Lorsai? About that, wasn't that just a small joke that I played on you? You wrote a letter to have her betray us. So I also wrote her a letter to have her betray you to see if I could make her betray someone again. I didn't expect that female spider to lack so much honor. Sigh, I even lost a lot of money gambling on her. Damn it, I underestimated the lack of morals of those damn dark elves. The Earth Elemental Dimensional Door? I admit I told my subordinates to do that in order to accomplish at least a little work for my boss. It counts as one of my future preparations. But that doesn't have anything to do with the Mist Kingdom, and it didn't matter if it succeeded or not, since just the revival of the elemental gods met the requirements of the will of the Chaos Abyss. I was dumbstruck after listening to all this. Carwins was so direct that he told me everything, but he was too direct. I didn't even know what to say anymore. Alright, it's so difficult for us brothers to meet up. How about finding a place for a drink? As he said so, Carwins, who was smiling rather strangely, gestured as if he was downing a cup, angering me even further. We were having so much difficulty fighting this war while this bastard was acting as if he was just playing a boring game, where it didn't matter if he won or lost as long as he had fun. This comparison naturally made me furious. Fine, I only have one more question I want to ask you. What's with all these descendants of yours in this plane? Just what plot do you have? Plot? Isn't that underhanded tactic your favorite? If I want something, I'll just take it by force. The current elemental tide's density is insufficient, so let's just talk about the main topic later. I'll plant some seeds, and when they sprout, I can borrow a vessel to come have some fun in the mortal plane. Besides, how could these small fights before the main battle possibly have anything to do with me? I am a veteran of the Chaos Abyss, it's below me to interfere in such a low-level battle. Relax, for the time being, I have no interest in any of the countries here. The best tasting wine should always be saved for last. Perhaps we'll fight in the end, but definitely not now. Carwins's words undoubtedly infuriated me. He really was treating this like a game. The Holy War had just begun, and the truly powerful existences were unable to descend to the mortal plane. So his words did have their own logic to them, but his attitude of not caring either way made me blow a fuse. As for those descendants of mine, isn't it normal? You're so old already, but you're still a virgin. Isn't that a little strange for a guy? I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, it wasn't on purpose. Carwins chuckled strangely as he gave an obviously insincere apology. He really knew how to get on my nerves. What's with being a virgin man? If virgin girls are pure and beautiful, then why can't there be pure and kind virgin men? This is the ugliest form of sexual discrimination. This is completely unreasonable logic. I strongly request for equality between male and female virgins. There's no fundamental difference, but why is there such a huge contrast in treatment? If it weren't for the fact that I was trying my best to remain serious, perhaps I would already be raging. It's been so many years now, and I thought back to how we looked exactly the same back then. I had a higher position, and I was the more handsome one, but I still had a slightly worse luck with women. Fine, fine, don't slap my face, I admit that my luck was much worse. But that doesn't mean that what he said, about an almost 400-year-old virgin male being strange, was true. Carwin shrugged. He probably understood my fits of craziness better than anyone else, and he knew that ignoring me was best. If it weren't for my assistance, then that Charles brat wouldn't have been able to successfully build his country. From a certain standpoint, I worked even harder than you. Our descendants can take care of themselves, and I didn't intend to meddle in their lives. But providing a vessel that can help me descend and have fun in the mortal plane is a price and duty that they must pay. Apart from the fact that Carwins just wanted to have fun, if there truly was a plot of some sort, it probably involved harvesting the seeds that he already planted. What daydreams are you having there? Leave Ren's body behind, and I won't care about anything else. I finally found an excuse to vent my displeasure as I lifted my sword again and blocked him. Carwins had all sorts of reasons that made it seem like he was completely disinterested in the current world. Yet how could I possibly let the demon prince just roam freely? What, do you think you can stop me? Carwins curled his lip disdainfully. He had instantly discerned my actual power level. I doubt I would be able to harm him even if he stood still and allowed me to hack at him. What about if you add me? Elisa's voice rang out from behind us. A flame dragon was twisting itself around the right arm of the flame sea Martianess superscript 1, while her left was covered by a patch of frost. Elisa had already partially unsealed herself when Roland had appeared and was now ready to go all out at any time. Martianess Elisa? Hey, don't be so serious. I really am here just for sightseeing. If you use your full force, my vessel won't be able to take the blow, and I'll have to return to the Chaos Abyss. But then it will be the end of the Descendants of the Mist. Relax, if there are no more Descendants of the Mist, then I'll do my best to give birth to a few more. My ideal family consists of 1 son and 2 daughters. My dear Roland, do you think 3 children are enough? If not, I can consider giving birth to a few more. Elisa continued to unseal herself as she smiled ever so sweetly while saying such seductive words. One of her eyes was a red ruby gem while her other had transformed into a deep blue icy sapphire. Right now, she had almost completely unsealed herself, and Elisa was prepared to use a single attack to annihilate everything. In her mind, the demon Prince Carwins was far too dangerous a threat to Roland. In that case, even if she destroyed her own physical body, she would give it her all and take Carwins back to the Chaos Abyss together with her. But I blocked her from doing so. I had a better option available to me. Did you see the sword? Do you know its use? If you know it, then be obedient, toss down your weapon, and surrender. Heroic spirit summoning? It's limited only to Mist royalty, but even if you summon the first Mist King, I won't be afraid. Wait, do you intend to summon who I think you are? When mentioning that king, even Carwins, who wasn't afraid of anything or anyone, began to show signs of panic. Yep, I intend to summon that ancient king from 400 years ago. He's definitely the only one who can counter you. In front of his grand power, even you, Carwins, will be nothing more than a weak child. He's also your counter. Stop it already. This is a battle with no winners. The result will be a loss for both of us. HMPH. So what if I lose together with you? It's fine as long as you don't have it easy. Winners in life should die, popular men should all die. Summoning the king. A formless wheel began spinning in midair, and even though it was clearly supposed to be a random summoning of a heroic spirit, I could somehow sense that the king who would answer the summons to come here would definitely be a certain person. The descendant of the mist, Bartholod, may perhaps not be the strongest of all the kings, and his military prowess and combat strategy may only be considered average, but Carwin's, he's definitely your greatest weakness, because I'm your father. Yep, the middle-aged bearded man wearing the black cape was our father and the only person who could possibly rein Carwins in. Carwins, what are you doing? Why do you have a bosom and curves now? Are you supposed to be male or female? Carwins wore a dazed expression. This was such a familiar reaction, I suppose. It was to be expected of father and son. From the very start, they would never use their sharp observational skills to focus on the correct, important things. Yet even as I was snickering, I became the next victim. Roland, where's your clothing? Since when did you start strutting around naked? How many times have I said so? As royalty, proper etiquette is more important than anything. Just look at you, you've even tattooed yourself. What's with those strange markings on your body? At this moment, I finally recalled that I was still naked. No wonder my lower half had felt so cold when the chilly wind had blown past. Roland, I told you this wouldn't be good for either of us. When this old guy begins lecturing, he won't stop for at least 2 hours. HMPH, so what? It's fine with me. Alright, to be honest, I was having a headache as well from listening to his nostalgic rants. But what else could I do apart from tolerating it? The next moment, however, Carwin's vanished in a puff of smoke. Without a doubt, he had escaped. Honestly, it isn't fun at all anymore with that old guy coming out. I'm going to fulfill the terms of my contract with Ren first before coming back to visit you to reminisce about the good old times. I had shot myself in the foot yet again. I was forced to face my old father's angry ranting by myself. But from a certain perspective, my strategy had worked. Since Carwins had retreated in the face of our father. Right now, on the Borealis magic map, the symbol that represented Ren could be seen rushing out of the city. Oh my, you want Roland to praise you? Just how much do I have to do to obtain his praise and fulfill this contract? What a troublesome junior. Note: 1. A woman who holds the rank of a marquess is called a marchioness. Chapter 190, Tassel. The strong prey on the weak, and only the strong survive. The main difference, perhaps, between the order goddess Astrea and the chaos goddess Cynthia was whether they agreed with this quote. Astrea believed that personal strength was not the most important and that the weak and the strong could live together under the laws of the gods. She believed that they would complement each other's weaknesses. This was her notion of a perfect society. Cynthia, however, believed in the competition between mortals for survival with only the strongest living on. Her notion of a perfect world was one where the best resources were provided to the mortals with the greatest potential. The root of their enmity was this difference in their ideals, which had also made them develop their creations very differently. The human society was an example for the side of order. Most humans didn't have significant differences between themselves, and very few could survive without relying on society. Even the king would be unable to live without the farmer, and it was possible, perhaps, that if they actually competed in terms of strength alone, then the king, who was so widely venerated by the people, might not be able to defeat the farmer who wielded a hoe. Humans, however, couldn't be considered the best representation of true order. That label was given to the angels, the creatures of the top level of order. Their future jobs were decided from their births, and for all their lives, they would progress on predetermined paths as they continued to work for the benefit of angel society. While such a community may seem perfect, it lacked flexibility. Without questions about the future, there would be a lack of expectancy and anticipation, and even the unemotional angels had quite a few problems. Otherwise, there wouldn't be existences in the lower planes that were known as the fallen angels. The side of chaos was completely opposite. Demons slew and devoured each other, and low-ranked demons followed the strict rule of the jungle. As long as they were powerful enough, they would receive a higher position. Everyone was always trying to climb up the ladder, and even though the bosses were not always considered to be smart, they were definitely strong. Weaklings should go die, the strong deserve everything. If I don't have a good life, that's because I'm not strong enough yet. It's fine as long as I'm happy, who cares about anything else? It was possible that this was all that ran through most demons' heads. It was also why other intelligent species often ridiculed the demons as idiotic muscleheads, But this wasn't quite the truth. High-ranked demons typically had at least 2 centuries of memories, and their accumulated experience gave them plenty of knowledge. In fact, they weren't dumb at all, but they were just too lazy to use their brains. After all, they only ever needed to show brute force, and very few species were better than them at this. Idiot. Perhaps I can't beat you in a debate, but I can just kill you. Whenever a person tried to use reason and logic with a demon, those demons would merely deal with it in their own way. It was likely that you would be dead and no longer able to debate them afterward. From a certain standpoint, the always immature Carwins was quite compatible with the side of chaos. Becoming fallen and demonized wasn't akin to brainwashing, so Carwin still pretty much possessed the same personality of back then. It was likely that he would only help his own descendants to create a country on a whim, and even the Mist Kingdom's destruction would completely follow the maxim of only the strong surviving that he believed in. He would probably only shrug and utter how regrettable before instantly forgetting about it. As for him taking over Ren's mind and defeating the beastmen 2 years ago, that was likely only because of the upcoming Holy War and because he needed to protect Ren's body for his upcoming descent to the mortal plane. For him to be able to take over Ren's body now, it was probably just like he said, the seed has sprouted, and Ren's body could now host his will. He only came to see the sights. I relaxed somewhat after figuring this out. After all, a person with the power level of a true god just idly roaming about would have far too much effect on the battlefield. As long as Carwin still cared even a little bit about our old ties, he wouldn't, at least, stand directly against us, and the old man's appearance would tie him down even more. After all, as long as he hadn't been brainwashed and controlled, not every prince was crazy enough to kill their father and destroy their own country. In most cases, no matter how rebellious the child, even if, of course, that said child's abilities were already on par with that of a true god, he would still be instinctively afraid of his strict father from his childhood. Roland, are you even listening to me? What were you even thinking going out like this? You are shaming all our ancestors. Your etiquette as a knight and royalty has all been wasted. You're also clearly the older brother. Didn't I tell you to teach your younger brother well? Just how have you been teaching him? Carwins didn't even discuss his gender change with you. Why didn't you try to stop him? Fine then. Since Carwins didn't care at all about leaving me behind as he escaped, the raging old man could only vent entirely at me. This lecturing that I hadn't received for over 300 years made me feel nostalgic, yet it also made me be at a loss for how to react. Damn it, when the old man starts lecturing he won't listen to any explanations at all. That bastard Carwins left me to suffer here alone. At the same moment that Roland was having fun while immersed in his father's love, Ren had exited the city and was considering how to fulfill the contract. So, what am I going to have to do to make Roland praise me? In a way, these vague contracts were the hardest to fulfill. As a demon, Carwins could easily break the terms of the contract. Countless souls had already lost everything after making deals with the lower planes, but he didn't feel it right, as Ren's ancestor, to lie to his own descendant. Besides, Carwins intended to stay in this body for an extended period of time, and having a good relationship with the host was quite necessary for him. Okay, I'll just slightly put in some effort and treat it as the rental fee for this body. I've decided that it's going to be you, Lorsai. Hey, this is my main task as well, to deal with those ignorant idiots. But even if I don't say it, Roland should have guessed it already. In a way, time had left its mark on Carwins as well. In the past, at least, Carwins definitely wasn't as intelligent as he was now. He didn't actually lie, he did come to the mortal plane to have a look around, but he didn't tell the complete truth either. He would accomplish some small tasks while having fun as well. True gods had to follow the rules of true gods as well, such as not directly participating in mortals' battles, which had to do with this world not being able to withstand the power of the true gods. It was to avoid the true gods from simply destroying everything with their power, and during the Holy War, the true gods intervening too early or even personally descending would cause the war to escalate in scale and go out of control. In a way, if it weren't for the participation of the Earth Elemental God Imrita Lorcan, Lorsai wouldn't have conducted her future ambush, nor would there have been the quick death of a true god. Without a doubt, That forest god Clairladen and the spider queen Lorsai both obviously broke the rules. It was as if two kindergartners were having a fight and the one who lost asked his older brother in elementary school for help. This caused the other side to be on the losing end, so that side invited his cousin in middle school, which was followed by both sides continually inviting more people to participate in the battle. The level of the sides would constantly be raised, and it would result in the two families becoming mortal enemies. Perhaps the final battle will come later, but it definitely won't be now. Disobedient children should be spanked. The only way to stop this vicious cycle would be if a parent from either family discovered that their children were being unreasonable and misbehaving and decided to teach their children a lesson with a good spanking. And the current Carwins was the parent delivering the spanking. At least on the surface, Lorsai was still on the side of chaos, so the spanking should be administered by them rather than the order side. Oh my, it seems that she's really quite angry. It looks like slapping her one time won't be enough. If Lorsai's betrayal was not quickly dealt with, there would, perhaps, be another traitor very soon. And her double-crossing not only did not gain her the forgiveness of the will of the Chaos Abyss, but it also made the Order side furious and abandon all thoughts of protecting her. There's plenty of fence-sitters and traitors, but a double traitor, especially at the very beginning of the war, is unprecedented. Lorsai, do you really think the main gods on both sides are blind or all dead? You attracted too much attention too early, so too bad for you. Originally, that foolish elf god who had decided on his own to descend to the mortal plane had committed a greater crime than you, but it's too bad that he's dead already. I can only use you as an example for the rest. Of course, Lorsai was doubtlessly the current greatest threat to the Northlands and the Mist Kingdom, and it was unknown if there were any personal grudges or benefits involved in this official task that Carwins was about to carry out. A meteor streaked across the sky, and when this meteor crashed into the ground, the Spider Queen goddess who was trying her best to obtain the position of the guardian god of the Northlands from Woomians was destined to meet misfortune. Oh, right, it's so rare that I get to come here, and I have plenty of time, so let's find a place to have some fun first. I'm already tired of playing with succubi superscript 1 and female half-demons, so why don't I find some new fun while I'm here? With those beautiful and slender female elves as well as the sturdy and cute half-blood female beastmen. Beauties, wait for me, this old guy is coming. Cough, I made a mistake, let me try again. Beauties, this lady is coming for you. Cough. Perhaps Lorsai would still be able to act as she pleased for some time before Carwins decided to get to his main task at hand. By the way, after a particular series of incidents, a certain princess's rumor of being a lesbian was destined to become circulated around by everyone. After night descended, the beasts in the pitch-black darkness began their final evening feast. This land had already bled enough, and this battle was nearing its end. In the snowy Northlands, even though the ground was covered with snow, there was a strange team proceeding through the ice. Although they were all elves, they were separated into two separate processions. The dark elves walking behind were in high spirits, while the gray elves walking in front wore depressed expressions. Gray blood elves, this was the name of this new species of gray elves. These roughly 30,000 gray elves had blank expressions as they trudged onwards. It was as if they were daydreaming zombies. They followed their king Adrian to work under a new master, and that master had unhesitatingly sent them right out to fight against the current masters of the Northlands. Are we going to have to fight the humans to the death? They had returned to their starting point after going a full circle. But to use Amon's words, you were allies equal to us in the past, but now you're nothing more than dogs. If Lorsai could be said to have lost the trust of both major sides due to her 2 consecutive betrayals, then these gray elves could be said to not even know how many times they had betrayed others by now. Betraying their human allies and the side of order? Yes, they did that at the very start. Betraying the expectations of the elven gods? Well, that occurred when they had abandoned the northern battlefield and had hurriedly returned to their homeland. Betraying the elves of the entire Northlands? Their gray-black skin color was the best evidence. They could still remember the looks of shock and immense hatred of the Northlands elves when they had suddenly betrayed them and changed sides on the battlefield. And they had now betrayed their own species yet again despite the fact that they were on the brink of a disaster. in order to participate in an utterly meaningless battle whose results didn't even matter to their race. That was the reason for their fatigued expressions and why they were visibly tormented by guilt and pain with every step. It was no wonder they were so exhausted. A warrior who had lost his conviction and desire to protect was no different from a zombie. Suddenly, amidst the desolate silence, dozens of voices rose in a blending of song. They were singing what would be sung at the year-end celebrations in the Tassel Kingdom and signified the end of the year and the gathering of their tribe. Dajda Jadi, Kasuad Esta. Our distant relatives, where did you go? We miss you here in the homeland. Frida LD, Cod. Are the ancient trees at home still verdant green? That familiar spring lake always reminds me of my childhood. The sky was so blue, back then. There had been continuous internal conflicts among the elves, and the legendary moon elf bard Tassel had wandered the continent in order to find a place where her tribe could live. After experiencing countless difficulties, Tassel finally settled on a piece of land in the north, where she signed a contract with the forest guardian god Claire Layden before joyously beginning her trip to return home. Unfortunately, the return trip was just too long, and Tassel, who was so worn out from her travels, died before she was able to return to her previous homeland. Luckily, her message was brought back to her tribe by her messenger pigeons, and her tribe completed the promise she had made, transforming that northern mountain into an elf paradise. Later generations of elves used the songs that she used to sing and created this classical song about the longing for one's homeland. And in recent years, at every year-end celebration, it would be the princess who would perform this song for everyone as a celebration of their now pleasant lives compared to the difficulties of the past. Dda Jadi Ad Dal Dadaati. My relatives, I finally found a dreamland for us. Our new home is in the north, and now, as that familiar, nostalgic song echoed throughout the mountains, the Greyblood elves felt more pain than ever before. The last time they had listened to this song, they had been celebrating with their relatives and friends, but after all the recent events, there was no one who hadn't lost a loved one. That song, it's the same voice. Impossible. As the Grey Elves choking turned into crying, someone among them noticed that this familiar song was being sung by a familiar voice, a voice that belonged to someone who should have been dead. Her Highness Suana. Ah, no, this is impossible. A sharp-eyed scout had already discovered the truth. A solitary figure could be seen singing in the mountains, and judging by her translucent body, she was probably a banshee like in the stories. The Grey Elves' faces turned pale as they faced the indisputable truth before them. They all came to a realization at the same time. Kill her. As the Grey Elves were still in shock and in tears, the Dark Elf General's angry roar woke them all up. His order was carried out by countless Dark Elves' magical arrows, which were about to destroy that lonely figure in a storm of arrows. No. Some Grey Elves were no longer able to hold themselves back and started fighting with the Dark Elves. They were doing their utmost to halt those life-threatening enchanted silver arrows. Yet it was too late. The expert archers within the Dark Elf troops had already heartlessly released a storm of arrow fire, and it appeared as if the newly born banshee before them would die again immediately when a miraculous sight suddenly occurred. A flaming phoenix flew through the sky, burning all the arrows to dust and blocking the several magic spells aimed at her. And when the phoenix landed on the ground, it transformed into a female warrior wielding a flaming divine sword. Numerous figures instantly appeared behind the cliff. The familiar military squadron was obviously an elite squad from the underground. I didn't plant this tree or cultivate this mountain, but if you want to pass by, even paying a toll wouldn't be enough to make me allow you all to pass. The red-haired girl spoke some confusing words, but not a single Dark Elf dared to speak up against her. After all, she was the famous figure who was the most likely person to rule over the entire underground, Phoenix Annie-Lade. And the other familiar voice caused the Grey Elves to tremble in fear. Perhaps a shocking tragedy was about to be exposed to the world. My fellow tribe members, you were all fooled. My death in the sudden declaration of battle was all an underhanded plot by evil, ambitious individuals. Note 1. According to Wikipedia, a succubus, plural succubi, is a Leyland demon in female form or supernatural entity in folklore, traced back to medieval legend, that appears in dreams and takes the form of a woman in order to seduce men, usually through sexual activity.